Chapter 253. Outside the Trestrimsa heaven, Aquamarine Palace. For immortal swords flew across the sky and a Taoist laughed. Senior brother, you are still the same. You can't hold it in anymore. Can you still protect your clan of Chan in this calamity? Outside the Trestrimsa heaven, an old Taoist sat cross-legged and sighed. West Spirit Mountain, 10,000 Dharma Buddhist Kingdom. Two Taoists had black and white chess pieces in front of them. They were playing a game of chess, giving off an illusory feeling. Senior brother, the calamity has begun. Yuancher can't sit still anymore. Junior brother, don't be impatient. When the time is right, we will let him join our Buddhist sect. Above the 9 heavens, Void's secret realm. A Taoist in a green robe looked at the heavenly palace. His aura was gloomy and cold. My good disciple, everyone below the sage is an ant. You will never understand that this world is not as simple as you think. Celestial Court, Lingshao Palace. The golden light in the sky dissipated. The jade clear talisman fell into his hand. Yi Xian's mind was in turmoil. No one knew that when the jade clear talisman appeared, the heaven-destroying halberd and the bronze Immortal Sutra in his sea of consciousness went berserk. If he did not suppress it, these two things would have burst out from his sea of consciousness. At this moment, the Jade Emperor's face was pale. He looked at Yi Xian with fear. Today, the jade clear talisman fell from the sky. This completely proved his previous guess. Yi Xian's background was too strong. He was obviously from the clan of Chan. What shocked the Jade Emperor the most was that after so many years, the sage had already escaped into the chaos and was no longer in the eyes of the world. But today, because of Yi Xian, the jade clear talisman fell from the heavenly palace. This was simply unimaginable. Not only was the Jade Emperor in turmoil, the other immortals' expressions changed too. They were more curious about Yi Xian's identity. What was the relationship between this Taoist and Yuancher Tianzuan? Could it be, he was the second-generation disciple of the clan of Chan? When this thought appeared in the hearts of the immortals, a look of horror appeared on their faces. They looked at Yi Xian with a look of fear in their eyes. How dare you? How dare you slander the guardian god of Chan school? If you don't give us justice today, we won't let this matter rest. Celestial Lord Longevity of the South stepped forward, followed by a large number of immortals. They occupied more than half of the immortals in the Lingshao Hall, which also proved how much weight the Chanism had in the Celestial Court. Previously, Changxing Tianzuan wasn't sure if Yi Xian was a member of the Chan sect. But now, even Yuancher Tianzuan's Yuqing Talisman decree had appeared. This completely proved that Yi Xian was a member of the Chan sect. Jade Emperor, the Fire Virtue Starlord and the Martial Virtue Starlord framed the heavenly guardians of the Chan sect. Jade Emperor, please uphold justice for the heavenly guardians of the Chan sect. Celestial Venerable Chang Sheng made a Taoist bow and his voice was extremely sharp. At this moment, the complicated forces of the Celestial Court also appeared. Obviously, Changxing Tianzuan and many other immortals with high cultivation were from the clan of Chan, and some of them were from the clan of Jie. Some of them were gods conferred by the investiture of the gods. Since the investiture of the gods was in the Jade Emperor's hands, these immortals were naturally under the Jade Emperor's command. Guards, take the Fire Lord and Wuda Star to the immortal slaying platform. Strip them of their immortal records and send them to the path of animals for 10 reincarnations. As the master of the 3 realms, the Jade Emperor naturally knew how to make a choice. Although he was the mastermind behind this matter, now that the situation had changed, he had to find a scapegoat. He could only throw the 2 of them out to calm the anger of the Chan school. Your Majesty, please spare our lives. When the Fire Lord and Wuda Star were begging for mercy, the 4 heavenly kings quickly stepped forward. They took out the immortal binding rope and tied the 2 up. They were escorted out of the Lingshao Hall and towards the immortal slaying platform. If this scene had happened before the appearance of the Jade Pure Decree, Yi Xian would have felt relieved. However, He did not feel anything now. His aura was extremely fluctuating. Yuanshi Tianzuan was one of the 3 pure saints outside the 33 levels of heaven. Yi Xian did not expect that he would be noticed by Yuanshi Tianzuan and even be given the Jade Pure Decree. After all, he was not from the Earth Immortal realm. The great tribulation of witches and demons and the fall of the untainted land were all fabricated by him. However, the appearance of the Jade Pure Decree had completely turned this lie into reality. How could Yi Xian not be frightened? The mind of a saint was unpredictable. Yi Xian only wanted to hide in the dark and constantly improve his cultivation. This was the path he wanted to take. However, the appearance of the Jade Pure Decree had completely disrupted his plan. Moreover, Yi Xian had an intuition that Yuanshi Tianzuan was not so kind as to confer the title of Divine Protector to him. He must have his own purpose. One could see the whole leopard from a single spot. Since Yuanshi Tianzuan knew of his existence, how could the other saints not know? Yi Xian now felt as if he was walking on thin ice. He felt that he had fallen into a terrible predicament. If he made a mistake, he was afraid that he would not even know how he died. Yi Xian had a faint guess. Could it be that the true body of the origin spirit was also one of the saints? Or was he Yuanshi Tianzuan? Thinking of this possibility, Yi Xian felt his scalp tingle. He did not dare to continue thinking about it. Minister Yi, I've really wronged you. When Yi Xian was deep in thought, the Jade Emperor personally walked towards him. He had an ashamed look on his face as he constantly comforted Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not reply. He uneasily rode a cloud and left the Lingxiao Hall. This also stunned the Jade Emperor. He looked deeply at Yi Xian's back and did not say anything. After all, the Jade Pure Decree had already been issued. Even if he was unwilling, he could not do anything to Yi Xian. After leaving the Lingxiao Hall, Yi Xian rode a cloud back to the Chaotic Cloud Palace. The doors of the Chaotic Cloud Palace were tightly shut. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on a futon. He stared at the Jade Pure Decree in his hand. When his eyes opened and closed, there was an extremely sinister look. This Jade Pure Decree seemed to be his protective talisman. However, in Yi Xian's eyes, it was a talisman that hastened his death. The will of a saint could not be defied. Everyone below the saint was an ant. He was just a small grand unity mystic immortal. How could he attract the attention of a saint? Yi Xian knew very well that the root of all this was related to Yuanling. The heaven-destroying halberd and the bronze immortal sutra in his body must have an unimaginable origin. That was why a saint had noticed him. What should I do? Yi Xian kept asking himself. He was deep in thought. Buzz. Half a day later, Yi Xian woke up from his thoughts. When he waved his hand, 3 items appeared in front of him. The first item was the bronze immortal sutra that Yuanling had left behind. The second item was the #1 killing weapon of all time, the heaven-destroying halberd. The third item was the river Styx diagram that Blood River Ancestor had given to him. The bronze immortal sutra was made of unknown materials. It recorded all the skills of the immortal sutra. Yi Xian had even obtained the forbidden chapter from it. Ever since the heaven-destroying halberd entered the earth immortal world, its murderous aura had been extremely restrained. Yi Xian could feel that the heaven-destroying halberd contained an unimaginably terrifying power. However, this power could not be used by him. As for the river Styx diagram, Yi Xian did not look at it carefully. Instead, he focused all his attention on the bronze immortal sutra and the heaven-destroying halberd. Buzz! Suddenly, something strange happened. The pages of the bronze immortal sutra flipped. Black immortal characters spread out and instantly submerged the Jade Pure Decree. The golden light on the decree was directly swallowed up. Bang! There was a muffled sound. The Jade Pure Decree was instantly turned into ashes. The black immortal characters suddenly rushed into Yi Xian's glabella. He was stunned. Calamity Transcender Technique. After a full 10 breaths of time, Yi Xian cried out in shock, and his face turned extremely red. It was all because the immortal text just now was actually a secret technique that he had never seen in the forbidden section. What was the Calamity Transcender Technique? The world was a slaughterhouse and all living beings were food. The Calamity Transcender Technique walked the path of stealing the heavens. Not only could it devour the immortal's Tao fruit, but it could also turn the immortal's divine powers into one's own. This was the terror of the Calamity Transcender Technique. Yi Xian was pleasantly surprised, but he was even more astonished. This was because there was no such technique in the forbidden chapter, and the Jade Clear Talisman decree was tainted with the aura of a saint, yet the Bronze Immortal Sutra was able to devour it and evolve it into this heaven-defying technique. Yi Xian could not understand. However, he did not think about it anymore. Since he had already caught the attention of a sage, it was useless for him to worry about it day and night. He could only take one step at a time. Moreover, Yi Xian also understood that if a sage wanted to harm him, with his current cultivation, he would not be able to resist. The only thing he had to do now was to constantly improve his cultivation. As long as he was strong, whether it was the Jade Emperor or the High and Mighty Sage, he would have the ability to protect himself. Moreover, Yi Xian had a faint guess that the Bronze Immortal Sutra and the Heaven-Punishing Halberd must be related to the sage. There were great secrets hidden in them. If he could find out these secrets one day, he might have the means to fight against the sage. Now that he had the Calamity Transcender Technique, he could quickly improve his cultivation. Not to mention, there were countless kinds of heaven and earth spirit medicines in this heaven realm. His cultivation would be improved qualitatively. Chapter 254. In the Bullfighting Palace. The Jade Emperor was wearing a green Taoist robe, and Venus Tai Bai was reporting something to him. Your Majesty, Yi Xian has the Jade Pure Decree. Your Majesty, you have to bear with it for the time being. Bear with it? The Jade Emperor laughed self-deprecatingly, and his face gradually darkened. He looked at Venus Tai Bai and said, as the master of the three realms, I can bear with the three pure ones, but do I have to bear with a little Taoist? This kid is extremely daring. Not only did he kill the Wood Brilliant Star Lord, but he also dared to sneak into the Moon Palace. Does he really think that he can look down on me just because he has the Jade Pure Decree? Hearing the Jade Emperor's words, Venus Tai Bai was stunned. He did not expect Yi Xian to be so daring as to sneak into the Moon Palace. No wonder the Jade Emperor was so against him. One had to know that the Moon Fairy was the Jade Emperor's taboo. All the immortals in the Heaven Realm knew that the Jade Emperor was obsessed with the Moon Fairy. In the distant past, the Canopy Marshal had flirted with the Moon Fairy. In a fit of anger, the Jade Emperor had sent him into the path of the beast to reincarnate for 1,000 generations. From this, it could be seen how much the Jade Emperor valued the Moon Fairy. Venus Tai Bai finally understood why the Jade Emperor was so furious. It turned out that the root of everything was the Moon Fairy. The Jade Emperor paced back and forth in the bullfighting palace. The aura around him became gloomier. Even his handsome face was slightly distorted. It made Tai Bai Jingxing keep quiet out of fear. He did not dare to make a sound because he knew that the Jade Emperor was on the verge of exploding with rage. Venus Tai Bai. Yes, Your Majesty. Spread this void image. I want to see how this Yi Xian will survive this calamity even with the Jade Clear Talisman Edict in his hands. The Jade Emperor tossed out a cyan jade slip. Under the fluctuation of immortal light, the scene of Yi Xian leaving the Guanghan Immortal Palace appeared. This caused Tai Bai Jingxing to be stunned, and his face turned pale. Your Majesty, you mustn't do this. If this scene were to spread, not to mention the other celestial beings, I'm afraid that your nephew Yang Jian would. Tai Bai Jingxing stuttered. That nephew of mine is arrogant and unruly, and he's even a disciple of the Jade Void sect. He doesn't even put me, his uncle, in his eyes. It's a good opportunity for Yang Jian to kill Yi Xian's spirit. Looking at the Jade Emperor's sinister expression, Taibai Jingxing's eyes narrowed. Since ancient times, femme fatale. That saying was true. Taibai Jingxing deeply understood that if this void image were to be spread out, then true Lord Erlang would definitely be furious. Even if Yi Xian had the jade clear talisman in his hands, he definitely wouldn't have a good time. Yang Jian, the third-generation disciple of the Chan sect, was a disciple of the immortal Yuding. His arts of 8-9 were extremely terrifying, and he had the divine power of the 36 heavenly dipper transformations. His third dharma eye could see through the heaven, earth, and man realms. He was known as the #1 war god of the three realms. When the monkey wreaked havoc in the heavenly palace, the Jade Emperor begged Yang Jian to subdue the monkey. Although there were some twists and turns, it proved that the #1 war god of the three realms deserved his reputation. Most importantly, it was said that Yang Jian had been in seclusion for 10,000 years and was about to enter the Daluo Jingxian realm. His cultivation was even more mysterious. How could Yi Xian, a mere Tai Xian immortal, be a match for Yang Jian? Tai Xian immortal, Tai golden immortal, overarching heaven Xian immortal, overarching heaven golden immortal, until he entered the Daluo Jingxian realm. Yi Xian and Yang Jian were 3 realms apart. The Jade Emperor's plan of killing with a borrowed knife was indeed extremely vicious. Venus Taibai didn't dare to say anything. He took the green jade slip and left. Looking at Venus Taibai's back, the Jade Emperor stood alone in the bullfighting palace and said in an extremely gloomy voice, Yi Xian, I didn't want to make things difficult for you. But who asked you to violate my taboo? At the same time, the chaotic cloud palace was very lively these days. Immortals from all over the world came to congratulate him. Yi Xian received them with a smile. Naturally, he drank and chatted happily with the immortals of the heaven realm. The 3,000 heavenly river navy guarded the chaotic cloud palace and completely established Yi Xian's foundation in the heaven realm. However, Yi Xian wasn't arrogant at all. Other than receiving the visiting immortals, he didn't go out at all. In the chaotic cloud palace, he crazily cultivated the Calamity Transcender technique and the immortal scripture, hoping to break through to the Tai golden immortal realm as soon as possible. However, cultivation wasn't something that could be achieved overnight. Although Yi Xian was extremely talented, he had just become an immortal. Moreover, he directly crossed several realms and entered the Tai Xian immortal realm. This was already a miracle. It was obviously impossible for him to enter the Tai golden immortal realm in a short time. Most of the immortals in the heaven realm were in the Xian immortal or golden immortal realm. There were only a few of them in the Tai realm. As for the immortals with real divine abilities, how could they be bound by the small heaven realm? They had already wandered far away. For example, the great god of the 3 seas, Neza, was an overarching heaven Xian immortal. He was only 1 step away from entering the overarching heaven golden immortal realm. He was only 2 steps away from Daluo Jingxian, who was beyond the 3 realms and not in the 5 elements. Although Yi Xian was labeled as a member of the Chan sect, the real great divines wouldn't lower themselves to visit him. This was also the pride of the great divines. Therefore, although Yi Xian seemed to be glorious now, in the eyes of the great divines, he was just a small immortal. Yi Xian was also aware of his own situation, but he wasn't discouraged. He could go from immortal to a Tai Xian immortal in less than 10 years. He was confident that he could break through to the Tai golden immortal realm within 10 years and ascend to the 9 heavens step by step. He even wanted to take a peek at the legendary sage realm. In the chaotic cloud palace, a stream of immortal qi gushed out of Yi Xian's mouth. He slowly opened his eyes, and a wisp of blood-red immortal light quietly flashed across his eyes. I've mastered the Tribulation Transcender technique, but with the immortals of the heaven realm nearby, it's too eye-catching to kill an immortal and devour their cultivation. However, if I continue to cultivate step by step, it will take at least 5,000 years to reach the Tai golden immortal realm. Yi Xian frowned slightly. His voice was slightly unwilling, and he fell into deep thought. If it took 5,000 years to step into the next realm, Yi Xian absolutely couldn't accept it. Now that he had become the target of public criticism, such a long cycle would only lead to unexpected changes. In fact, Yi Xian didn't know that although 5,000 years seemed long, it was actually just a snap of the fingers in the eyes of the other immortals. If they could advance by a large realm, it would make them go wild with joy. From a mortal to a celestial immortal, other immortals would need at least 10,000 years to cultivate bitterly. However, from a celestial immortal to a Tai Xian immortal, it would take hundreds of thousands of years. In the immortal realm, every advancement by a large realm would take an endless amount of time. Yi Xian could go from immortal to a Tai Xian immortal in 10 years. This was already a fantasy. Spiritual essence of heaven and earth, golden core immortal peach. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes, and his voice was extremely strange. Yi Xian stayed in the celestial court, enduring the Jade Emperor's spying. He was walking on thin ice. He was doing this for the spirit pills and treasures unique to the heaven realm. Only these things could allow his cultivation to increase at a terrifying rate in the shortest time possible. Chapter 255. The wealth of the celestial court was unimaginable. This was also the reason why Yi Xian had been so patient and had not left. He had been planning for his own cultivation. However, Yi Xian also knew that there were too many forbidden areas in the celestial court. The first was the Peach Garden, where immortal-grade peaches that were between 3,000 and 9,000 years old were planted. The second was the Tushita Palace of Taishang Laojun, where there were countless elixirs and miraculous medicines. There were even elixirs that could allow mortals to become immortals. There was also the legendary 9 Transformations golden elixir that could raise an immortal's realm. The third was the Celestial Court's treasure house, where there were countless immortal spells and weapons, as well as countless spiritual items of the universe. However, Yi Xian was very annoyed. The Peach Garden was protected by the Heaven Ceiling Formation. Even if he had the primordial spirit void, he could not sneak into the Peach Garden. If he tried to break the formation by force, it would definitely lead to great changes. The Tushita Palace was the Taishang Laojun's place of enlightenment. The Taishang Laojun was the external incarnation of Lao Tzu, one of the 3 pure ones. He helped the Jade Emperor to control the 3 realms. Even if Yi Xian was brave, he would not dare to sneak into the Tushita Palace to steal the elixirs. The key to the Celestial Court's treasure house was controlled by the Jade Emperor. If Yi Xian wanted to get the key to the Celestial Court's treasure house from the Jade Emperor, he would be courting death. Yi Xian thought hard but could only shake his head helplessly. These 3 forbidden areas were really tempting to him, but there was nothing he could do. Yi Xian could not help but sigh. It was a great fortune for the monkey to be able to eat the Peach Garden and golden elixir. However, Yi Xian also knew that the monkey wreaked havoc in the celestial court with the tacit consent of Buddhism and Taoism. How could he compare to the monkey? Yi Xian became more and more frustrated as he racked his brains. However, before he could think of a way to increase his cultivation, a series of hurried footsteps came from outside the chaotic cloud palace. Yi Daoyu, quickly descend to the lower realm and hide for 1,000 years. Heavenly Venerable Changsheng rushed into the chaotic cloud palace with an anxious look on his face. Before Yi Xian could ask what was going on, Heavenly Venerable Changsheng urged him to hurry. Fellow Taoist, what happened? Yi Xian was startled, and a bad premonition arose in his heart. Looking at Yi Xian's confused expression, the Longevity Celestial Lord reprimanded him. Let me ask you, did you sneak into the Moon Palace? Yi Xian's expression changed drastically as soon as Empyrean Longevity finished speaking. One had to know that him sneaking into the Guanghan Palace was a secret between him and the Guanghan Fairy. How could it have reached the ears of Empyrean Longevity? Looking at Yi Xian's stunned expression, Heavenly Lord Changsheng sighed and said, Fellow Taoist, what should I say to you? That day, I repeatedly told you to take a detour when you pass by the Moon Palace. Why didn't you listen to my advice and do such a foolish thing? At this moment, Yi Xian tried his best to calm himself down. He kept recalling his experience in the Moon Palace. Suddenly, an idea flashed across his mind. He finally knew where the problem was. When he left the Moon Palace that day, because of the Fairy of the Moon Palace's words, his aura became chaotic and a flaw appeared in his primordial spirit void. For a moment, his figure was revealed. However, Yi Xian did not care about it. But now, it seemed that the problem occurred at that time. It exposed the fact that he had entered the Moon Palace. Fellow Taoist, how did you know that I had entered the Moon Palace? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and asked. Oh, I'm not the only one who knows about this. The entire celestial court knows that you have entered the Moon Palace without permission. You'd better go to the lower realm and hide for 1,000 years. Otherwise, a disaster will befall you. Heavenly Venerable Changsheng was exasperated. Fellow Taoist, you must be joking. I have known the Fairy of the Moon Palace since the Untainted Land. Now that I have reappeared, what's wrong with meeting her? Did I violate any heavenly rules? Yi Xian was now a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Since the matter had been exposed, he would let nature take its course. He even said some high-sounding words. Fellow Taoist, it doesn't matter even if you have violated the heavenly rules. Because you are the Yuqing guardian deity conferred by Yuanshi Tianzuan, the celestial court can't do anything to you. But you should never have gone to the Moon Palace. Immortal Venerable Changsheng explained the seriousness of the matter to Yi Xian. This made Yi Xian's face turn gloomy. Only then did he know why Immortal Venerable Changsheng was so anxious. There were countless immortals, Buddhas, and great demons in the 3 realms who admired the Fairy of the Moon Palace. Yi Xian's actions had directly violated their taboo. Not to mention, if the true Lord Erlang were to find out about this, he would definitely ascend to the heavens and teach Yi Xian a lesson. Yi Xian had never forgotten that Primogenitor Demon was a primordial unity golden immortal, but he was still chased by Yang Jian for hundreds of millions of miles. In the end, he was sealed in the retrograde passage by a group of immortals. He was now only a primordial unity Xian immortal. If Yang Jian really came to the heavens to find trouble with him, even though he was conferred as the Yuqing guardian deity and belonged to the same lineage as Yang Jian, his life would not be in danger. But he would definitely end up in a miserable state. Fellow Taoist, the pure Yang golden immortal Lu Dongxian is my best friend. He has a Taoist temple in the Earth Immortal Realm's Black Cave Mountain. Go down to the mortal realm secretly and take my spiritual talisman to his place to hide for a while. When the news dies down, return to the celestial court. Immortal Venerable Changsheng threw out a spiritual talisman and handed it directly to Yi Xian. He kept urging him to go down to the mortal realm as soon as possible. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was gloomy, but he did not move. He knew that Immortal Venerable Changsheng was doing this for his own good. He wanted him to escape this great calamity. But Yi Xian also knew that if he escaped to the mortal realm like this, his reputation would be completely ruined in the future. Sage Erlang Xiansheng, Yi Xian said in a gloomy voice. His eyes flickered with a bloody light as he directly rejected the spirit talisman that Heavenly Sovereign Changsheng handed over. He said, if he really wants to cause trouble for me without any reason, this humble Taoist will naturally not be afraid of him. Immortal Venerable Changsheng looked at Yi Xian's fearless face and said in exasperation, Fellow Taoist, you are really stupid. My junior brother Yang Jian is an all-heaven golden immortal. He is only 1 step away from entering the realm of Daluo Jingxian. Even though he does not take the Jade Emperor seriously, he is extremely domineering in the Chan sect. Other than his master, Immortal Yu Ding, he does not listen to anyone. Brother, I appreciate your kindness. Even though Yang Jian is the war god of the 3 realms, if he thinks that I am easy to bully, he is very wrong. Yi Xian said coldly. When he opened and closed his eyes, there was a flash of blood-red light. Come, send Immortal Venerable Changsheng off. Before immortal Venerable Chang Sheng could continue to persuade him, Yi Xian turned and left. This made immortal Venerable Chang Sheng sigh helplessly. He flung his sleeves and left the chaotic cloud palace on a cloud. In fact, immortal Venerable Chang Sheng had been very kind to Yi Xian. If it were not for the Jade Pure Decree, he would not have gotten involved in this matter at all. Yang Jian was one of the most outstanding among the third-generation disciples of the Chan sect. He was not someone immortal Venerable Chang Sheng could compare with. Earth Immortal Realm, Guanjiang Estuary, Shimi Cave. A young immortal general in silver chainmail and cloud boots was sitting cross-legged in the void to cultivate. Chapter 256. His face was like jade and there was a vertical eye between his eyebrows. Beside him was a three-pointed double-edged sword that floated up and down in the void. His body occasionally emitted a golden light that caused the Sumeru Grotto heaven to distort slightly. This person was Yang Jian, the divine Lord Erlang, the number one god of war in the three realms. Second Master. The void was chaotic and ripples spread. The eldest of the seven monsters of Plum Mountain, Yuan Hong, spoke loudly, causing Yang Jian to slowly open his eyes. "Why are you in such a hurry?" Yang Jian asked. "Second Master, look." Yuan Hong didn't say anything else. He tossed out a cyan jade slip and directly displayed the image of Yi Xian leaving the Guanghan Palace. When this scene appeared in Yang Jian's eyes, it instantly caused him to suffocate and his expression to instantly darken. "What a thief! How dare you sneak into the Moon Palace?" Yang Jian's eyes were cold and murderous. The power of an all-heaven golden immortal caused the entire Sumeru Grotto heaven to rumble as if it would collapse at any time. Who is this Taoist? Doesn't he know that the Moon Palace is a forbidden area in the three realms? Yang Jian tried his best to control his aura, but his voice became colder and colder. "Second Master, I've already investigated. This Taoist's name is Yi Xian. Because he killed Primogenitor Demon, the Jade Emperor conferred him the title of Divine Lord Demon Slayer," Yuan Hong reported truthfully. "Divine Lord Demon Slayer?" Yang Jian narrowed his eyes and said with a slight contempt. "My uncle is quite interesting. Other than Demon Slayer, he has the same title as me. Is Yi Xian also an all-heaven golden immortal?" Yang Jian said coldly. Looking at Yang Jian's cold face, Yuan Hong whispered, "Big brother, this Taoist is only a Tai mystic immortal. Perhaps he is someone in the celestial court, but in front of Second Master, he is nothing." It's just that what?" Yang Jian's eyes narrowed. "Second Master, there is a Jade Clear Decree outside the 33 heavens that conferred Yi Xian the title of Jade Clear Divine Protector." Hearing Yuan Hong's words, Yang Jian's eyes narrowed. He didn't care about the Jade Emperor's conferment, but the Jade Clear Talisman Decree was Yuan Tianzuan's will. He had to consider it carefully. After dozens of breaths, Yang Jian woke up from his deep thoughts, and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. "So what if he's from Chan school? If we don't teach this Taoist a lesson, I'm afraid there will be lechers who will imitate him." Yang Jian snorted coldly. As the war god of the three realms, even though Yi Xian had the Jade Clear Talisman Decree, it was not a big deal to Yang Jian. As long as he did not kill Yi Xian, even Yuan Tianzuan could not blame him. After all, saints couldn't be born in the three realms. This had become an ironclad rule after the God Seal War. This world was ruled by Daluo Jingxian, and Yang Jian was about to step into that realm. He really didn't fear anyone in the three realms. "Saber, come," Yang Jian said coldly. The all-heaven immortal light rippled in all directions, and the Sumeru space shattered. When he stepped out, he appeared in the sky above the Guan River. On this day, the winds and clouds changed, and the Guan River was overturned. The war god of the three realms, Yang Jian, stepped into the sky with his three-pointed, double-edged saber and silver chainmail, straight into the 33rd heaven. The celestial court, the 33rd heaven. The immortals were shocked and silent, because they all knew that the war god of the three realms was coming to the heaven realm. The four heavenly kings of the southern heavenly gate and Li Jing led 100,000 heavenly soldiers and generals to welcome Yang Jian. Yang Jian was the number one disciple of the third generation of Chan school under the Jade Void sect. His title was Erlang Divine Lord. His 8-9 mysteries Tong Tian could move the earth, and his heavenly spirit 36 transformations was unpredictable. His heavenly eye could illuminate the three realms of heaven, earth, and man. No one could compare to his power. Golden lotuses fell from the sky, and sweet springs gushed from the ground. The heavenly music of the 9 heavens was playing, and the immortals were bowing. From this, it could be seen how high Yang Jian's position in the celestial court was. Yang Jian entered the celestial court and walked past the southern heavenly gate. He did not stay, nor was he in the mood to chat with the immortals. He went straight into the Lingshao Palace and asked the immortals to follow behind him. The Lingshao Palace. There were thousands of auspicious qi and tens of thousands of rays of light. The Jade Emperor was wearing an emperor's robe and sat high up, while the immortals stood below to accompany him. Without waiting for the immortal officials to summon Yang Jian into the palace, Yang Jian held his three-pointed, double-edged saber and went straight into the Lingshao Palace. The all-heaven immortal light around him made the immortals look at him in shock. Yang Jian, why didn't you cultivate at the Guan River? Why did you come to the heaven realm today? The Jade Emperor said sternly. Yang Jian's face was cold and he did not respond to the Jade Emperor's pretense. Instead, he looked around at the immortals and said in a calm and cold voice, I heard that the celestial court's demon slayer immortal Xiansheng has an unfathomable cultivation. I've heard of it for a long time. Today, I want to ask for advice from him to verify my cultivation. The immortals did not believe Yang Jian's words. They all knew that Yang Jian came because Yi Xian had sneaked into the Guanghan Celestial Palace. As for the so-called advice, they were afraid that his real purpose was to teach Yi Xian a lesson. Junior brother, you're an all-heaven golden immortal, and Yi Xian is only a Tai Yi Xian immortal. How can he be your opponent? Why don't we just drop the matter? Heavenly Lord Changsheng asked tentatively. Senior brother Changsheng, although we don't have the same master, we're from the same sect. This demon slayer immortal Xiansheng is the reincarnation of Daluo Jingxian. It's a good opportunity to verify your cultivation. I hope you won't dissuade me. Yang Jian's voice was cold, but he was telling Heavenly Lord Changsheng that if he continued to speak for Yi Xian, he could not blame Yang Jian for falling out with him. Summon Yi Xian to the Lingshao Palace, the Jade Emperor said sternly. The Jade Emperor spoke in a dignified manner, but a cold glint flashed across his eyes. His plan to kill with a borrowed knife was about to bear fruit. Lunar Star, Guanghan Palace. The Guanghan fairy held the jade rabbit in her arms and stood under the Tongtian osmanthus tree. Her eyes shone like stars as she looked at the Lingshao Palace. When she saw Yang Jian standing in the middle of the palace, her cold voice slowly rang out. Yun Yang, although Yi Xian saved your life, he also peeped at this fairy's jade body. It's only right that he has this calamity. Master, please save his life, the jade rabbit pleaded. It was not that she pitied Yi Xian, but because if Yi Xian died, she would not be able to live either. After all, Yi Xian's blood contract was still planted in her primordial spirit. The Guanghan fairy's eyes were cold. Then, she slowly nodded and said, that's good too. Saving his life today can be considered as helping you repay his kindness. Thank you, Master, the Jade Rabbit said happily. On this day, the lunar star shone. The Tongtian osmanthus tree swayed. A moonlight bridge hung down from the celestial court. The Guanghan fairy, who had not walked out of the moon palace for 10,000 years, covered her face with a veil. She was walking along the moonlight bridge towards the Lingshao Palace. Chaotic Cloud Palace. The immortal official came with the Jade Emperor's instructions and summoned him to the Lingshao Palace. Yi Xian sent the immortal official away and stood alone in the chaotic cloud palace. His expression was indifferent and silent. When his eyes opened and closed, there was a bloody light flashing violently. Buzz! The space between Yi Xian's eyebrows shone. The heaven-destroying halberd rippled out. It was releasing a fierce aura that had never been seen before. You and I are of the same mind. Today's battle is a battle of dignity for me, Yi Xian. Even if Yang Jian is an all-heaven golden immortal, I will let these immortals know that I, Yi Xian, am not a pushover. Yi Xian's voice was cold. He did not run away and could not run away. This was a battle of dignity. If he ran away, he would become the laughingstock of the three realms. He would also be ridiculed by the Guanghan fairy who thought she was infallible. Now, the only thing Yi Xian could count on was the heaven-destroying halberd. This was because according to the immortal scripture, the heaven-destroying halberd was the #1 killing weapon of all time. It contained incredible power. Most importantly, Yi Xian did not use the heaven-destroying halberd in his battle with Yuan Ling. He also wanted to see if he could cross three realms to fight the war god of the three realms when he transformed into a grand unity Xian immortal and wielded the heaven-destroying halberd. This was not only a battle of dignity. It was also a way for Yi Xian to measure his battle strength. This was also related to his next plan. Rumble. Pushing open the door of the chaotic cloud palace, Yi Xian rode on a black cloud and rushed towards the Lingxiao palace under the gaze of the 3,000 heavenly river navy. Chapter 257. Bullfighting Palace, Lingxiao Hall. Yang Jian looked down at the immortals and stood proudly in the middle. He had an aura that made the immortals of the heaven realm not dare to breathe. In terms of cultivation, Yang Jian was the top disciple of the third generation of the Chan school. In terms of cultivation, Yang Jian was an all-heaven golden immortal and was about to enter the realm of Daluo Jingxian. He was also known as the top war god of the three realms. From the immortals of the celestial court to the Hades, Yang Jian was the brightest star no matter where he went. No one could cover his light. The immortals of the heaven realm sighed. It would be fine if Yi Xian escaped, but if he really came to the Lingxiao Hall, even if he wasn't killed by Yang Jian, his fate would be extremely miserable. Fairy Guanghan has arrived. Suddenly, the celestial official said with a trembling voice. A moonlight sky bridge spread out. The goddess of Guanghan covered her face with a veil and was walking on the moonlight sky bridge. When she arrived in the Lingxiao Hall, all the celestials present were stunned into silence. No one had expected that Fairy Guanghan, who hadn't left the Moon Palace for 10,000 years, would actually come to the celestial court today. This simply shocked the immortals. At this moment, the Jade Emperor's body stiffened. Yang Jian was no longer arrogant. They all looked at Fairy Guanghan. The infatuation in their eyes seemed to be about to turn into reality. Greetings, Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor was the ruler of the three realms and the master of the celestial court. Fairy Guanghan naturally wouldn't be rude. She bowed slightly. Fairy, there's no need to be so polite. The Jade Emperor instantly woke up. His voice trembled slightly. He ignored his dignity and quickly walked down the Lingxiao Hall. It seemed that he wanted to help Fairy Guanghan up. Unfortunately, before the Jade Emperor could step forward, the Fairy of Guanghan took 3 steps back. Taibai Jingxing also coughed to remind the Jade Emperor. Immediately, the Jade Emperor woke up. His face was slightly red as he sat back on his throne. Chang'e, why are you here? Yang Jian was overjoyed. He strode toward the Fairy of Guanghan. However, the Fairy of Guanghan frowned and said, "Please conduct yourself with dignity." Even though Fairy Guanghan's face was covered by a veil, she still gave people the feeling that she could only be seen from afar and could not be profaned. She also radiated a cold and pure aura. This made Yang Jian smile awkwardly. He knew that he had been too rash. "Greetings, Fairy Guanghan." Yang Jian bowed and cupped his fists at Fairy Guanghan. This made the other immortals look at him with a hint of helplessness in their eyes. It was true that heroes could not resist the charms of beautiful women. When Yang Jian came to the celestial court, he did not even greet the Jade Emperor. However, when the Moon Fairy appeared, he bowed solemnly. From this, it could be seen how important the Moon Fairy was to Yang Jian. "I heard that Perfected Lord is about to become a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. I have nothing to do in the Moon Palace, so I specially came to the heavenly courts to observe Perfected Lord's Tao, skills, and mystical abilities," Fairy Guanghan said softly. Fairy Guanghan did not say that she had anything to do with Yi Xian. Instead, she used the excuse of observing Yang Jian's Tao skills. This made Yang Jian happy. He cupped his fists and said, "If you are willing, I can teach you all my skills. Today, I just want to teach this Taoist Yi Xian a lesson so that he does not know the etiquette of the celestial court." Yang Jian did not say that he came to the celestial court for Fairy Guanghan. However, his words made it clear that he wanted to please the Fairy of Guanghan. This made the other immortals shake their heads helplessly. They secretly sighed that Yi Xian was really unlucky. He could have provoked anyone, but he had to provoke the Fairy of Guanghan. At this moment, the Jade Emperor sat on the throne. His face was calm, showing the majesty of the Lord of the Three Realms. However, when he opened his eyes, he looked at Yang Jian with a sinister look. If the Jade Emperor saw Yi Xian as a stumbling block, then Yang Jian was a thorn in his heart. He wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. However, he could only think about it because the Jade Emperor knew that it was impossible. Demon Slayer Lord Xiansheng has arrived. Suddenly, the voice of an immortal official came from outside the hall. The other immortals' faces changed slightly. They all looked outside the hall. Yi Xian was dressed in black. His black hair fell behind his head. His face was calm, and there was no aura around him. He was walking slowly into the Lingxiao Hall. Yi Xian stood in the center of the hall. When he saw the Fairy of Guanghan, his eyes narrowed. He did not expect this woman to be here too. "Minister Yi, Erlang Lord Xiansheng has come to the Celestial Court. I heard that you have great Tao skills, so I came to ask you for advice." "What do you want?" the Jade Emperor said sternly. The other immortals looked at each other with different expressions. Everyone sighed in their hearts when they saw Yi Xian appear here. They secretly blamed Yi Xian for not knowing his limits. Did he not know that Yang Jian was here for him? How dare he appear here? Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not respond to the Jade Emperor's question. Instead, he looked at Yang Jian, who was beside the Fairy of Guanghan, and smiled. "I'm just a grand unity mystic immortal. How can I be a match for Erlang Lord Xiansheng? There's no need for this advice, right?" As Yi Xian spoke, the immortals all nodded without the slightest bit of surprise. It was obvious that Yi Xian knew his own limits and knew that he wasn't Yang Jian's match. It was reasonable for him to say such words. At this moment, Yang Jian's smile disappeared as he stared at Yi Xian. A trace of contempt flashed through his eyes because he could tell with a glance that Yi Xian was only a Grand Unity Xian immortal. If he wanted to kill Yi Xian, it would only be a matter of time. If the Fairy of Guanghan was not here, and Yi Xian had the Jade Clear Talisman decree, Yang Jian would have taught Yi Xian a lesson since they were both from the clan of enlightenment. But now, the Fairy of Guanghan was beside him. In order to show his cultivation, Yang Jian would not let Yi Xian go so easily. Some people might ask, how can the war god of the three realms, Yang Jian, be so arrogant now? How can he be worthy of his identity? In fact, Yang Jian was an extremely cold and wise person. He would not find trouble with Yi Xian if it was something else. But since ancient times, heroes could not resist the charms of beautiful women. In front of the Fairy of Guanghan, Yang Jian completely lost his wisdom and calmness. He only wanted to show his martial prowess in front of the fairy of Guanghan. Are you Yi Xian? Yang Jian strode toward Yi Xian, making the other immortals look at him. This humble Taoist is Yi Xian. Yi Xian bowed his head and spoke in a neither humble nor arrogant manner. I heard that you once killed primordial demon and made a contribution to the heaven realm. You were conferred the title of Demon Slayer Sage Lord. But someone also told me that you sneaked into the Moon Palace when you first entered the Celestial Court. Is this true? Yang Jian looked down at Yi Xian, and his voice gradually became cold. Since the fairy of Guanghan was beside him, Yang Jian did not need to hide anything. He could use Yi Xian to express his intentions to the fairy of Guanghan. I have known the fairy of Guanghan since the primordial world. How can I sneak in when we meet an old friend? Yi Xian said calmly in the face of Yang Jian's oppression. Humph. Yang Jian snorted and said, Yi Xian, the celestial court has its own rules. Male immortals are not allowed to enter any fairy's residence. If anyone violates this rule, their immortal status will be removed and they will be banished to the lower realm and become immortal. Don't you know that? Or is it that, as a heavenly deity of the heaven realm, you don't put me in your eyes? Chapter 258. Yang Jian was aggressive and even used the heavenly rules as an excuse to make things difficult for Yi Xian. This made the immortal's expressions change. It seemed that Yang Jian was going to be ruthless to Yi Xian today. Junior brother, Yi Daoyu has just entered the celestial court and doesn't know much about the heavenly rules. Why don't we exempt him from punishment this time? Heavenly Venerable Changsheng forced a smile and kept winking at Yi Xian. It was obvious that he was telling Yi Xian to bow down and apologize to Yang Jian so that he could avoid this calamity. At this moment, the Jade Emperor sneered as he watched, but didn't say anything to stop him. The fairy of the Moon Palace had a strange gaze as she slightly stared at Yi Xian, as if she'd already expected Yi Xian to apologize to Yang Jian. After all, Yang Jian was an all-heaven golden immortal. He was a mighty figure in the three realms. How could Yi Xian, a mere Tai Xian immortal, be a match for Yang Jian? In fact, the Guanghan fairy came to the celestial court this time to stop Yang Jian for Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian had peeped at her body. Originally, the Guanghan fairy already had a grudge against Yi Xian. At this moment, she could borrow Yang Jian's hands to teach Yi Xian a lesson, but she definitely wouldn't let Yang Jian harm Yi Xian's life. Just when the immortals thought that Yi Xian was going to bow down and apologize to Yang Jian, the next scene made the immortals fall silent and gasp. The smile on Yi Xian's face gradually disappeared. When he opened and closed his eyes, it was as if two big stars were rotating. When he looked at Yang Jian, there was a trace of murderous intent in his eyes. Heavenly rules. Yi Xian smiled coldly and said, Yang Jian, I gave you some face and you still want to open a dye shop. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Everyone in the three realms has the right to talk to me about the heavenly rules, but you don't. Back then, the Holy Mother of Peach Mountain fell in love with a mortal and married a mortal. That's how you came into being. Have you forgotten how you became the disciple of Immortal? You ding like a dog under the pursuit of the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals? That's how you saved your mother by splitting Peach Mountain. Where did you put the heavenly rules at that time? As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, Yang Jian's originally arrogant expression completely darkened. The terrifying all-heaven immortal light around him was in chaos, causing the Lingshao Hall to rumble and shake, as if it was about to collapse at any moment. I forgot that your sister, the third Holy Mother of Peach Mountain, was also married to a mortal. But you disregarded your family's kinship. And you disregarded your family's family. And acted as executioner too. And you, but. You and you. You. How dare a heartless and ungrateful thing like you talk about the heavenly rules with me? Wow. The immortals gasped. They looked at Yi Xian as if they were looking at a dead man. Everyone in the three realms knew about Yang Jian's history. But no one dared to talk about it. It was Yang Jian's biggest taboo. He saw it as a stain on his life. Not only did the immortals' faces change, but even the goddess of Moon Palace was shocked. She looked at Yi Xian in panic. She blamed Yi Xian in her heart. Was he courting death? The Jade Emperor was livid. He was speechless. This was not only Yang Jian's scandal, but also his own. The Holy Mother of Peach Mountain was his sister. No one would have thought that Yi Xian would be so daring as to expose the scandal of the past. This caused the immortals to look at Yi Xian as if they were looking at a madman. Good, good, good. It was as if the celestial thunder from the 9 heavens was exploding, as if the sun, moon, and stars were exploding. Yang Jian's handsome face was distorted as he looked at Yi Xian with a gaze that had never been seen before. Little Taoist, how dare you humiliate me like this? If I don't destroy your body and soul today, how can I relieve my hatred? Rumble. The all-heaven immortal light shone in all directions. Yang Jian slashed at Yi Xian with his three-pointed, double-edged sword. The world was twisted and shattered. It was a terrifying power. Go! Yi Xian's expression was extremely serious as he faced Yang Jian's slash. He formed an incantation with both hands and his entire body suddenly transformed into a ray of immortal light. He directly disappeared from the Lingxiao Hall, barely dodging Yang Jian's immortal slaying slash. Where do you think you're going? Yang Jian was so angry that he was about to explode. How could he let Yi Xian go? When he took a step forward, the Lingxiao Hall shook. He turned into a beam of immortal light and chased after Yi Xian. Yi Xian is dead meat. The immortals trembled. They set up their clouds. Even the Jade Emperor and the goddess of Moon Palace rose into the air and rushed to the place where the two were fighting. The 33 layers of heaven. The endless sky was shattering, the Jade Palace was collapsing, and the 90,000 kilometers of the heavenly river was rolling backwards. Yang Jian moved as fast as lightning, and every swing of his blade seemed to be able to destroy everything. As for Yi Xian, he frantically fled, dodging Yang Jian's pursuit in an extremely sorry state. It was not that Yi Xian did not want to fight Yang Jian head-on, but the gap between their realms was too big. One was an all-heaven golden immortal, while the other was a primordial unity mystic immortal. They were like an elephant and an ant. There was no comparison at all. Moreover, Yi Xian could feel that he could not withstand every slash of Yang Jian's. The power of an all-heaven golden immortal would severely injure him in an instant. However, Yi Xian was extremely calm. Since he dared to appear in front of Yang Jian, he was confident that he could face him. It was obviously impossible to fight him head-on. He was just waiting for an opportunity to attack. There was only one chance. If he could severely injure Yang Jian, he would be able to kill him. Splash! 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 The Milky Way rumbled and rolled. Yi Xian's hair was disheveled. His body was covered in cracks, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. It was obvious that even though Yi Xian didn't fight Yang Jian head-on, just the all-heaven immortal light that Yang Jian had slashed out was enough to heavily injure him. Buzz! The air froze and Yi Xian stopped fleeing. He stood above the heavenly river and turned around to look at Yang Jian. A wisp of mournful and malicious killing intent quietly flashed through his eyes. Slash! Yang Jian flew across the sky, his face flushed red from anger. His three-pointed, double-edged blade suddenly slashed out with all-heaven immortal light, violently slashing towards the center of Yi Xian's brows. Soul-subduing banner. Yi Xian roared to the sky. As he waved his hand, the billion soul-subduing banner surged out. Billions of dead souls whizzed out and met the all-heaven immortal light head-on with the power of heaven and earth. Sizzle! Although the billions of souls were terrifying, they melted like snow in the spring when faced with the all-heaven immortal light. The saber light that pierced through the heavens and the earth directly slashed the myriad soul-suppressing banner into two, and its remaining might didn't decrease as it slashed onto Yi Xian's body. Slash! The sound of a blade piercing into flesh could be heard. A terrifying wound appeared on Yi Xian's chest. His flesh was rolling, and the ribs in his chest could be faintly seen. At this moment, a large amount of blood spurted out. Pfft! A mouthful of blood sprayed out from Yi Xian's mouth. His face was like golden paper, and the Tai-E immortal light around him shattered at this moment. His entire body was dyed in blood as he fell towards the heavenly river below. Chapter 259. Perfected Cultivator, please don't kill him, Fairy Guanghan said anxiously as she arrived on a cloud. Hearing what Fairy Guanghan said, Yang Jian's killing intent subsided. He waved his hand and a terrifying deity aura spread out, immediately sucking Yi Xian over. Ugh! A muffled groan came out of Yi Xian's mouth. Yang Jian grabbed onto Yi Xian's neck with one hand and lifted him into the air as if he was lifting a chicken. His 5 fingers were slightly tightening, as if he was going to twist Yi Xian's neck and kill him in the next moment. Meanwhile, the group of immortals and the Jade Emperor floated over. When they saw this scene, everyone's expressions were different, but they looked at Yi Xian as if they were looking at a dead person. Perfected Cultivator, I owe this Taoist a favor. Please spare his life. The Fairy of the Moon Palace bowed and pleaded in a pleading tone. He was the top war god of the 3 realms, the top disciple of the 3rd generation of the Chan sect, and the perfected cultivator Erlang Xiansheng. His name was Yang Jian, a man who was destined to be extraordinary. He had few enemies in the 3 realms and 6 realms. Yi Xian, you're truly pitiful. You actually allowed a woman to plead for you to avoid death. Today, I, the true monarch, will not kill you for the sake of the Moon Fairy. However, you must remember that from now on, don't provoke the Moon Fairy. If there's a next time, I'll let you know what it means to live a life worse than death. Yang Jian said coldly and let go of Yi Xian. There was disdain in his eyes. Thank you, perfected cultivator. Fairy Guanghan bowed and finally felt relieved. She had saved Yi Xian, so she had repaid Yi Xian's favor. Perfected cultivator, you're invincible in the 3 realms. I've seen it today. Perfected cultivator, who in the 3 realms can defeat you? Your Majesty, please hold a cloud wave banquet to welcome true Lord to the celestial court. At this moment, all the immortals were smiling flatteringly as they expressed their goodwill towards Yang Jian. No one paid any attention to Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian had offended Yang Jian and was a complete and utter failure. So, would anyone in the 3 dimensions dare to befriend him? The Jade Emperor watched coldly from the side. The immortals all expressed their goodwill. Yang Jian stood proudly above the heavenly river. Only Yi Xian was covered in blood and his eyes drooped. He looked like a loser that everyone ignored. All of a sudden. Rumble. The heaven and earth within 100 million miles were shaking violently. The 33 layers of heaven were dark and lightless, while the water of the Milky Way was rolling. A beam of Tongtian devil light descended from the 33 layers of heaven, covering Yi Xian's blood-soaked body. It was a demonic aura that could shake the past and present. It was a murderous light. Yi Xian was bathed in the Tongtian devil light as he rose from the void. His broken body was healing, and his glabella was glowing. Yang Jian, do you think you've won? Suddenly, just as the immortals were praising Yang Jian, Yi Xian's cold voice sounded. Yang Jian's expression changed when he saw such a terrifying phenomenon. He also saw Yi Xian's strange and fierce aura. An extremely bad feeling appeared in his heart. Buzz! A 3-inch halberd surged out from Yi Xian's glabella. The heaven-destroying halberd expanded in the wind until it became 3 feet long. Yi Xian held the halberd in his hand. Chaotic Sky Halberd Technique, first move, Heaven Smiting. It was as if an ancient demon god was roaring, as if an ancient demon from beyond the heavens was roaring. Yi Xian was silent, but a boundless and emotionless voice sounded out from within the 33 heavens. Bang! 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 The heavenly river rolled back and the stars exploded. Yi Xian's black hair fluttered in the wind. When he opened and closed his eyes, they turned pale white. The heaven-destroying halberd in his hand released a fierce aura that had never been seen before. Bang! Heaven and earth shattered and everything was annihilated. A black light pierced through the past and present, destroying heaven and earth. It instantly shattered the all-heaven celestial light around Yang Jian. The cold and terrifying tip of the halberd pierced through his chest and nailed him in the void. Like a god, like an immortal, like a demon, Yi Xian walked forward in the void. With every step he took, heaven and earth shook violently. It was a terrifying sight. Yi Xian's eyes were pale and emotionless. He slowly pulled the heaven-destroying halberd out of Yang Jian's chest, bringing with it a large amount of golden blood. Yang Jian howled in pain. He looked at Yi Xian with a look of anger that had never been seen before. He used all his strength to activate the arts of 8-9, wanting to kill Yi Xian right there and then. Unfortunately, after suffering Yi Xian's killing blow, Yang Jian was already heavily injured and on the verge of death. Furthermore, he was suppressed by the fierce aura emitted by the heaven-punishing halberd, causing him to be unable to attack Yi Xian. Yi Xian was very calm from the beginning to the end. He endured Yang Jian's merciless attacks and endured Yang Jian's extreme humiliation. He was just waiting for an opportunity to kill Yang Jian. Yi Xian knew that if he fought Yang Jian head-on, even with the heaven-destroying halberd in his hand, he wouldn't be Yang Jian's match. He could only use himself as bait to get close to Yang Jian and launch this fatal blow. Obviously, he succeeded. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Perhaps some people would say that Yi Xian was too despicable and shameless. However, Yang Jian was an all-heaven golden immortal. He was 3 whole realms below Yi Xian. How could he not be shameless? Yi Xian calmly attacked before the shocked eyes of the immortals and the Guanghan fairy. However, this wasn't the end. If Yi Xian only managed to injure Yang Jian, this was definitely not the result that Yi Xian wanted. 8 Arts of the Inverse Demon. The black light that filled the sky was like a group of stars shining in the sky. Yi Xian's expression was sinister and extremely poisonous. He took a step forward and violently slashed the heavenly punishing halberd towards Yang Jian. The terrifying and fierce demonic light directly pierced dozens of bloody holes through Yang Jian's body. Buzz! The void shook and the universe shifted. Yi Xian's face was ferocious. A terrifying suction force appeared in his palms and fingers. Before Yang Jian's body fell into the heavenly river below, he suddenly sucked Yang Jian's body over. Bang! His palms were like the sky, suppressing everything. Yi Xian pressed his palms on Yang Jian's head. He looked at Yang Jian with a cruel and violent gaze. The world was silent and there was no sound. Yi Xian's series of attacks only took a moment. However, the Guanghan fairy and the other immortals were stunned speechless. It was as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Yi Xian, stop. The Guanghan fairy's face was pale. She had already recovered from the shock. Her voice was trembling as she hurriedly rode a cloud towards Yi Xian. Get lost. The heaven-destroying halberd shook the sky and brought along the Tongtian demonic light. Before the Guanghan fairy could reach him, Yi Xian sent her flying. The Guanghan fairy spat out a mouthful of blood. The heavenly light around her was extremely dim. The heaven-destroying halberd was the #1 killing weapon in all of history. This wasn't just for show. Under the control of Yi Xian's Tai Xian immortal cultivation, he could already unleash 20% of its power. How could the Guanghan fairy withstand it? Fairy. The Jade Emperor's face changed. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be so ruthless as to attack the Guanghan Ferry. As he waved his palms, a beam of heavenly light shot out and froze the Guanghan Ferry in the void. However, when he saw the heaven-destroying halberd in Yi Xian's hands, his eyes were filled with fear. Could this be? The Jade Emperor's teeth were chattering and his eyes were filled with fear. He had already guessed what the weapon in Yi Xian's hands was. Chapter 260. No one noticed the Jade Emperor's uncertain expression, nor did they notice what the Heavenfall halberd was. The immortals were already in a mess, their eyes focused on Yi Xian and Yang Jian. The fact that the number one war god of the three realms, Yang Jian, had been defeated by a mere Taoist was simply inconceivable to the immortals. They deeply understood that Yang Jian was an all-heaven golden immortal and was only one step away from the perfected golden immortal realm. At this moment, Yi Xian's left hand held onto the halberd as his right hand grabbed onto Yang Jian's head. An extremely sinister killing intent coiled around his body, while Yang Jian's entire body was bathed in blood. His body was in tatters, and dozens of bloody holes appeared all over his body, causing him to look extremely miserable. Yi Xian, you can't kill me. Yang Jian smiled miserably, looking at Yi Xian with pride. He didn't beg for mercy even though he was in Yi Xian's hands. He was the Erlang sage, the war god of the three realms. Even if his soul was destroyed, he wouldn't beg for mercy. This was Yang Jian's pride and dignity. I have to say, you are my greatest enemy. If I fight you head-on, I won't be your match. Unfortunately, the winner takes all, and your only fate is death. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Tiny immortal light shone from his palms as he looked at Yang Jian with ruthless killing intent. In fact, Yi Xian didn't dislike Yang Jian's arrogance, because Yang Jian was an all-heaven golden immortal. He had the right to be arrogant. However, Yi Xian also disdained Yang Jian's arrogance. It was his arrogance and conceit that gave him the chance to kill him. Now, he was also facing the fate of having his soul scattered. Yang Jian, let me send you on your last journey. Yi Xian had to be ruthless to his enemies. He had to kill them all without leaving any future trouble. This was his principle, and there had never been an exception. He didn't waste any more words. Tiny immortal light shone from his hand on Yang Jian's head and crushed his nascent spirit. No! Lord Changsheng and the Moon Fairy cried out in alarm. Unfortunately, no one could stop Yi Xian from killing Yang Jian. Bang! The tiny celestial light wreaked havoc in Yang Jian's body and was about to crush his primordial spirit. However, at this moment, a great change occurred. Awoo! With a deafening roar that shook the void, a black divine hound suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. Its sharp claws glowed with terrifying primordial immortal light as they slammed violently and ruthlessly toward Yi Xian's back. Bang! With a loud bang, Yi Xian was ambushed and instantly sent flying. The tiny celestial light around him shattered, proving how serious the blow was. Howling celestial dog. The immortals were in an uproar. Only now did they recall that Yang Jian had a primeval beast by his side, the howling celestial dog. It had followed Yang Jian to conquer the three dimensions since the primeval times, and this man and dog were inseparable. Never had they imagined that it would actually save Yang Jian's life at this critical moment. Buzz! The void trembled and ripples spread. Yi Xian flew back and fixed his body in the void. When he looked back at Yang Jian, he saw Yang Jian smiling coldly at him. Beside him, a black divine hound was staring at him ferociously. 8-9 Mysteries. The heavens shook and the void exploded. With Yang Jian as the center, terrifying all-heaven celestial light covered him. His broken body was rapidly regenerating. When the all-heaven celestial light dissipated, his body was intact and the three-pointed, double-edged sword in his hand appeared in front of Yi Xian's eyes. Such a scene caused Yi Xian's eyes to slightly narrow, and his expression gradually darkened. The 8-9 Mysteries is worthy of its reputation. It's a method of sanctification. Moreover, Yang Jian is an all-heaven golden immortal. As long as a trace of his primordial spirit is not destroyed, he can regenerate his body. Although Yi Xian's weapon is strange, there is a gap of 3 realms between him and Yang Jian. I'm afraid he may not be a match for him. That's right. It's really rare for this Taoist to injure Yang Jian. But he doesn't know that all heaven golden immortals are not that simple. Stepping into this realm means that one is immortal. As long as a little Yuan Ling is alive, he can regenerate his body. Don't forget that Yang Jian was careless just now. That's why he was defeated by Yi Xian. He hasn't even used the 36 heavenly dipper transformations yet. The immortals looked askance and discussed animatedly. Each of them had lived for hundreds of thousands of years and naturally had extraordinary knowledge. They also had an extraordinary understanding of the all-heaven golden immortal realm. Although they were amazed by Yi Xian, the gap between their cultivation levels was obvious. Although Yi Xian had injured Yang Jian with a sneak attack, now that Yang Jian had recovered, Yi Xian would probably die at Yang Jian's hands. Yi Xian, I have to say that if I give you more time, I'm afraid even I won't be a match for you. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance anymore. Yang Jian stood in the air as his arrogant expression disappeared. He finally treated Yi Xian as a true opponent, because he almost died at Yi Xian's hands just now. If it wasn't for the howling celestial dog's sneak attack that allowed him to escape from Yi Xian's hands, his soul would have been annihilated long ago. Buzz! The 3-pointed, double-edged blade pointed at Yi Xian from afar. The all-heaven immortal light covered the sky and covered the earth. Yang Jian finally started to get serious and put away his contempt for Yi Xian. As his eyes rotated, a trace of fear flashed through his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian. He was not afraid of Yi Xian's cultivation level, but Yi Xian's ruthless mind and the heaven-destroying halberd in his hand. Although Yang Jian was arrogant, he wasn't stupid. Just now, because of his own arrogance, he allowed Yi Xian to approach him and even used the strange weapon in his hand to heavily injure him to the point of death. Yang Jian asked himself. Ever since the battle of godhood, he had never tasted the taste of death again. However, in that short moment just now, he felt the arrival of death. This feeling was so terrifying that it made Yang Jian's heart tremble. He knew that he could not let Yi Xian live today. If Yi Xian was given more time to grow, he would definitely die at the hands of Yi Xian one day. Immortal, you can destroy his cultivation level, but please spare his life. Fairy Guanghan bowed from afar and pleaded to Yang Jian. Yang Jian shook his head slowly in response to Fairy Guanghan's request and said apologetically, Fairy, Yang Jian does not agree. If I don't kill him today, I will definitely die at his hands in the future. Hiss. As soon as Yang Jian finished speaking, the immortals sucked in a breath of cold air. No one thought that Yang Jian would actually give Yi Xian such a great evaluation, and actually view him as his greatest enemy. In the distant past, Yang Jian had never treated Yi Xian with such an attitude, even when facing the lawless monkey. Could it be that Yi Xian's potential was greater than that monkey's? At this moment, the goddess of the Moon Palace bit her lips. She had not expected Yang Jian to reject her request. This was something that had never happened before. She could only smile bitterly, unable to say anything. Chapter 261. Ha! All of a sudden. Yi Xian sneered. He looked at the goddess of Guanghan with disdain and said, Goddess of Guanghan, you are so ignorant. Do you really think he can kill me? Buzz! The heavens could not be destroyed and the earth could not be buried. The heaven-destroying halberd in Yi Xian's hand buzzed. The murderous aura that broke through the heavens shook the 33 heavens. Yi Xian pointed the halberd at Yang Jian and said in a strange and cruel voice, Yang Jian, if I were you, I would have fled to the lower realm instead of putting on a show here. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, Yang Jian's body trembled. A trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes as he looked at Yi Xian, but it quickly disappeared. The immortals did not know that although Yang Jian looked unharmed, he was just putting on a strong front. One had to know that the heavenly punishing halberd was the #1 killing weapon in all of history. Yi Xian had pierced through Yang Jian's body and injured his source long ago. He seemed to be unparalleled in power, but in reality, he could only unleash 30% of his cultivation as an all-heaven golden immortal. Yi Xian naturally understood the power of the heaven-destroying halberd. He could tell that Yang Jian was putting on a show. Yang Jian only wanted to use 30% of his strength as an all-heaven golden immortal to kill Yi Xian here. Cut the crap. Only one of us can survive today. He slashed out with his three-pointed, double-edged saber, creating a 300,000-foot-long blade light that slashed towards Yi Xian. Although the blazing all-heaven immortal light was dim, it still contained 30% of Yang Jian's strength. You think you can kill me? Yi Xian coldly roared. He'd long since seen through Yang Jian's current cultivation, and there wasn't the slightest trace of fear on his face. The heavenly punishing halberd swung the heavens, and when the halberd blasted out, it carried a monstrous black light as it violently smashed towards Yang Jian. Rumble. When the two powerful forces collided, the water of the heavenly river for 90,000 miles was swept into the void. In the next moment, the two of them fought in the sky. Heavenly Astral 36 Transformations. Yang Jian roared again and again. The all-heaven celestial light transformed into a 10,000-meter-long celestial dragon that stretched across heaven and earth. Its 1,000-meter-long dragon claws violently swiped at Yi Xian as if it wanted to tear him to shreds. Transcendence World. Yi Xian's roar shattered mountains and rivers, causing the heavens and earth to turn upside down. His hands formed seals as he unleashed a secret technique from the undying immortal scripture. His body expanded violently until he was 30,000 meters tall. When he punched out, he sent the heavenly dragon flying. Martial Arts Dragon Mastery. After Yi Xian used his Dharma idol, his 30,000-meter body emitted a terrifying immortal light. He even used a killing technique that he had never used before as he violently charged towards the 30,000-meter-long heavenly dragon that Yang Jian had transformed into. What was the dragon mastery of martial arts? The martial arts fighting technique was a secret technique of the sorcerer tribe. After using it, one could kill a 9-clawed golden dragon in the 9 heavens. In the distant past, there was an ancient sorcerer who tore apart a sky dragon and ate it. It could be said that he was invincible in the untainted land. Bang! 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 Yi Xian swung the heaven-destroying halberd with one hand and clenched his other hand into a fist, madly attacking the heavenly dragon. Golden blood dyed the sky as dragon roars rang out incessantly. Yang Jian transformed into a 30,000-meter-long heavenly dragon, and a divine dragon swung its tail as it fiercely lashed onto Yi Xian's chest, causing his body to rupture and spit out a mouthful of blood essence. However, the heavenly slaying halberd had also pierced through the heavenly dragon's body, causing it to roar miserably. Bang! 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 Yi Xian seemed to have gone mad as he ignored the dragon's tail violently attacking his body. His two fists were like the stars in the sky as they violently smashed towards the dragon's head. The golden blood that splashed out was even more tragic and beautiful. Roar! In the face of Yi Xian's frenzied attacks, the heavenly dragon that Yang Jian had transformed into wrapped around Yi Xian's body. The terrifying dragon claws that were emitting immortal light also violently slapped Yi Xian's body. Blood splattered across the sky as the heavens and earth shook. The immortals watched in horror as the towering giant that Yi Xian had transformed into and the heavenly dragon that Yang Jian had transformed into attacked each other. The tragic scene was extremely terrifying. The Tiangang 36 transformations can change everything in the world. It is one of the Taoist superpowers and has incredible power. Only the 72 Disha transformations can compete with it. However, what technique is Yi Xian using? Why have I never seen it before? Heavenly Lord Changsheng exclaimed in surprise. Humph. Dharma World, the Sorcerer Tribe's superpowers. If I'm not wrong, Yi Xian is using the martial arts fighting technique of the Sorcerer Tribe. I didn't expect Yi Xian to have the Sorcerer Tribe's secret technique. The Jade Emperor narrowed his eyes and his voice was extremely serious. Sorcerer Tribe's superpowers. The immortals were in an uproar and everyone's face was pale. Could Yi Xian be from the Sorcerer Tribe? An immortal exclaimed in horror. No, he doesn't have the aura of the Sorcerer Tribe on him. He is indeed an immortal said with certainty. While the immortals were discussing, the battle between the two in the sky had come to an end. After a loud bang, Yi Xian's body returned to normal size and the heavenly dragon transformed into Yang Jian's appearance. Yi Xian was bathed in blood and panted heavily. The tiny immortal light around him was extremely dim. On the other hand, Yang Jian's hair was disheveled and there were many bruises on his face. His entire body was dripping with blood. He no longer had the power of the number one war god of the three realms. The immortals were stunned by this scene. They couldn't understand why Yang Jian, an all-heaven golden immortal, couldn't take down Yi Xian. Your Majesty, what's going on? Venus Taibai asked. The Jade Emperor smiled coldly and said, my nephew is too arrogant. His origin was injured by Yi Xian and he can only use 30% of his cultivation. However, he wants to kill Yi Xian so badly that he is now fighting Yi Xian with his life. The Jade Emperor was in a good mood. These two were thorns in his flesh and he was happy to see them both injured. Perfected immortals, let's end this sparring here. Let's not hurt each other. Fairy Guanghan frowned slightly. She didn't expect things to turn out this way. This was definitely not the result she wanted to see. If they were to continue fighting, one of them would definitely die. Fairy, step back. After I kill him, I will drink and chat with you. Yang Jian's face was ferocious and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He couldn't lose to Yi Xian and he couldn't let Fairy Guanghan see him as a joke. If he didn't kill Yi Xian today, not only would his reputation be damaged, but he would also leave an impression of a loser in front of Fairy Guanghan. This was definitely not the result he wanted. From the beginning to the end, Yang Jian had been speaking gently to the Fairy of Guanghan. It was obvious that he was deeply infatuated with the Fairy of Guanghan, but this scene caused Yi Xian to feel extreme disdain. Yang Jian, you are the number one war god of the three realms of all heaven golden immortals. However, in my opinion, you are just a piece of trash. Pitiful and sad. If I had your cultivation, I would have pressed Fairy Guanghan under me and ravaged her to my heart's content. Who cares if she is willing or not? How dare you? Yang Jian's expression froze for a moment as he roared at Yi Xian. Insulting his beloved like this simply made his heart explode from anger. His gaze towards Yi Xian was filled with unimaginable killing intent. Yi Xian, you are shameless. Fairy Guanghan was stunned and scolded Yi Xian angrily. She didn't expect Yi Xian to humiliate her like this. Chapter 262. Shameless? Yi Xian coldly smiled and said, I have to say, after seeing Fairy Guanghan's exquisite jade body that day, I couldn't sleep at all. If I had Yang Jian's cultivation that day, I would definitely have kissed Fairy Guanghan and felt the beauty of the number one beauty of the three realms. Silence. Silence. Dead silence. When Yi Xian finished speaking, the immortals were stunned. The Jade Emperor's body trembled and his face turned red. The Fairy of Guanghan's immortal light was in a mess. Although her face was covered by a veil and no one could see her expression, her eyes were filled with shame and anger. Yi Xian's words, whether intentional or unintentional, revealed the fact that he'd seen the jade body of the Moon Fairy. This kind of fantasy was simply unimaginable to the immortals, and it caused the immortals and the Jade Emperor to be speechless. At this moment, Yang Jian stared at the fairy of Guanghan. Even his voice was trembling. He said, Fairy. Fairy. Is he telling the truth? Yi Xian, you are shameless. The fairy of Guanghan had never been humiliated like this. Tears welled up in her eyes. She summoned a cloud and disappeared. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not care about the fairy of Guanghan's curses. Because the fairy of Guanghan was just a tool in his eyes. He was just making the best use of her. Yang Jian, let me tell you. I have already gotten the fairy of Guanghan's body. Yi Xian's simple words not only caused Yang Jian to be stunned speechless, even the Jade Emperor and the other immortals seemed to have turned into puppets. An extremely strange atmosphere spread throughout the world. Now, Yi Xian's eyes focused as the heavenly punishing halberd released a terrifying aura. He took a step forward, and without waiting for Yang Jian to recover from his daze, the cold tip of the halberd ruthlessly pierced through Yang Jian's heart. Die! Yi Xian held the heaven-destroying halberd in his hand and roared savagely. He poured what little power he had left in his body into the halberd. An extremely terrifying and ferocious aura exploded with a bang and instantly blasted Yang Jian into a bloody mist. That's right. Yi Xian had spouted so much nonsense just to make Yang Jian lose his mind. Only then would he be able to scatter his soul and kill him. And this was Yi Xian's true motive. There was no such thing as despicable and shameless. Only the winner takes all. Even though he had the heaven-destroying halberd, a golden immortal of all heaven was still a golden immortal of all heaven. Even though Yang Jian was seriously injured and could only use 30% of his power, it was still not something that Yi Xian could withstand. Everything was over. Yi Xian's entire body was trembling. He had racked his brains and used every conceivable method he could think of to overcome this calamity of life and death, but in the end, he had managed to overcome it. Call him despicable and shameless. Call him heartless. Yi Xian only wanted to live, not die under Yang Jian's blade. That was all. Eye of heaven and earth Dharma. All of a sudden, heaven and earth buzzed with each word. Before Yi Xian could recover, a tightly shut vertical eye appeared in the sky. Immediately, the 33 layers of the celestial court shook violently. Oh no! Looking at this scene, the Jade Emperor suddenly came to his senses. Only he knew what had happened. His face was already pale and his eyes were frozen. He did not care about the immortals around him. His hands formed a supreme immortal art, causing the 33 layers of the celestial court to erect a protective formation. Yi Xian, I want you to never be reincarnated. The sky exploded and everything collapsed. Yang Jian's cold voice echoed between heaven and earth. The vertical eye in the sky slowly opened. The eye of heaven and earth, the immortal light of destruction. These were Yang Jian's innate divine powers and also his greatest trump card. It was also his most powerful attack. It was an old legend. Yang Jian was the product of man and immortal. When he was born, he was bestowed with 3 eyes. There were 9 immortal lights of destruction in his eyes. Even Daluo Jingxian did not dare to take them head-on. Even during the investiture of the gods, Yang Jian had never used his eye of heaven and earth. This was because every time he used the immortal light of destruction, his origin would be damaged and he would no longer be able to reach the Sage-to-Be realm. Today, Yi Xian destroyed his physical body and scattered his soul. However, under the protection of the eye of heaven and earth, Yang Jian's true spirit was not destroyed. This completely enraged him. In the end, he disregarded his Tongtian immortal Dao and wanted to use the immortal light of destruction to kill Yi Xian. Break! A spot of immortal light fell from the eye of heaven and earth. Everything was distorted. Countless immortal islands and palaces turned into ashes. Some immortals who could not dodge in time were hit by the aftershock of the immortal light of destruction. Their souls were scattered between heaven and earth. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression was mournful and unwilling. He could feel that death was coming for him. He did not expect that he would still be defeated by Yang Jian after using all his means. The immortal light of destruction was too terrifying. It was a gift from heaven and earth to Yang Jian. No one could survive under the immortal light of destruction. Even the Jade Emperor stopped hiding his cultivation and activated the Celestial Protection Array to protect the entire Celestial Court. "You're still too early to kill me," Yi Xian roared at the sky. His eyes were wild and sinister. His hands moved endlessly as he formed an unimaginable immortal art. Boundless heaven and earth inverted. With the weapon as the body and blood as the spirit, quick. Pft, pft, pft. When Yi Xian used the forbidden immortal art, he bled from his 7 orifices and his entire body shot out a bloody mist that filled the sky. He was like an evil spirit that crawled out of hell, terrifying and frightening. The bloody mist that filled the sky dyed the heaven-punishing halberd a mournful and blood-red color, and it even emitted a bloody light that covered Yi Xian within. Man and halberd as one. Yi Xian roared violently as the immortal light of annihilation approached him. Instantly, the 90,000 kilometers of heavenly river turned into endless water vapor, and the sound of everything collapsing could be heard. The heavens were pierced through. Golden blood flowed from Yang Jian's Dharma eye of heaven and earth. Then, it disappeared into the sky. His primordial spirit was extremely weak and had fallen into a coma. The celestial hound whimpered and carried Yang Jian's broken primordial spirit. It turned into a terrifying immortal light and fled towards the lower realm. Obviously, it was afraid that some immortals would take advantage of the situation and destroy Yang Jian's broken primordial spirit. Yi Xian's body was tattered and lifeless. It was unknown if he was alive or dead, but the heavenly punishing halberd revolved around him and carried a monstrous ferocious aura to protect his body as he fell from the 33rd level of the heaven realm to the lower realms. At this moment, when the Jade Emperor saw this, his eyes flashed with a terrifying killing intent. He wanted to catch up with the two of them and kill them one by one. However, the heaven-protecting formation had been activated. Without the support of his immortal chi, the aftermath of the battle between the two of them would bring an unimaginable catastrophe to the heaven realm. Moreover, after much consideration, the Jade Emperor gave up the idea of killing the two of them. This was because Yang Jian was the disciple of Immortal Yu Ding and the first disciple of the 3rd generation of the Chan sect. If he could not kill Yang Jian and was discovered by the 12 ancient golden immortals, he would suffer an unimaginable catastrophe. As for the heaven-punishing halberd in Yi Xian's hand, it caused the Jade Emperor to feel extreme fear. If he were to provoke this weapon to protect its master and erupt with an apocalyptic might, his soul would scatter and he would die. The shocking battle ended with Yi Xian and Yang Jian both injured. However, the enmity between the two of them had been formed. In the future, one of them would die. Chapter 263. Don't worry about not having friends in the future. Who in the world doesn't know you? Yang Jian was the most dazzling star in the 3 realms. He had many titles and many legends. Lord Erlang was the god of war in the 3 realms, the #1 disciple of the 3rd generation of the Chan school, and the god of law enforcement of the celestial court. Everyone in the 3 realms heard Yang Jian's name. Yi Xian was a nameless person. No one had heard of his name except for killing primordial demon and being conferred the title of Lord Erlang by the Jade Emperor. However, after the shocking battle in the heaven realm spread, Yi Xian was known by everyone in the 3 realms. They were even discussing who Yi Xian was. In the past, even when facing that lawless monkey, he was still in an invincible position. However, it was precisely this kind of proud son of the heavens that ended up with his body annihilated. Even a little bit of his true spirit had fled to the lower realms under the protection of the howling celestial dog, and the culprit was this Taoist Yi Xian. Although Yi Xian's life and death were unknown, his result was not better than Yang Jian's. The battle between the two of them did not determine the winner, but it ended with both of them suffering. Regardless of the countless demon kings in the earth immortal world, the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas in the West Mountain Great Thunderclap Temple, or the immortals of the Chan school and Jie school were already familiar with Yi Xian's name. Yi Xian and Yang Jian were evenly matched. This was already a fantasy. This also proved Yi Xian's terrifying cultivation. Although the immortals of the celestial court spread the news that Yi Xian was only a grand unity mystic immortal, everyone in the three realms did not believe it. They all thought that it was just a rumor. If Yi Xian was really a grand unity mystic immortal, he would not even be able to take one move from Yang Jian, an all-heaven golden immortal. He would be beaten to death. Therefore, regardless of whether it was the demon kings or the bodhisattvas or Buddhas, even the immortals of the Chan school and Jie school all thought that Yi Xian must be an all-heaven golden immortal. He was in the same realm as Yang Jian. Jade Spring Mountain, Golden Afterglow Cave. This was the Tao venue of one of the 12 ancient golden immortals, perfected Jade Cauldron. As one of the 12 ancient golden immortals, needless to say, perfected Yu Ding's cultivation was an extremely terrifying existence. However, this old man was a peaceful person. He did not fight or snatch, nor did he have an undeserved reputation. He stayed in seclusion in Jade Spring Mountain all year round to cultivate Tao. It could be said that he was a transcendent Daoyuo Jingxian. However, today, Golden Cloud's cave's immortal light was shining brightly, and sighs could be heard continuously. Erlang, I've told you long ago that there are hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the three realms. You have to tread on thin ice when you cultivate and seek the Tao. That Taoist Yi Xian's background is unknown, and he even has your Grandmaster Yu Qing's talisman decree. Why did you have to provoke him and bear such a terrible consequence with him? Taoist Yu Ding's hair and beard were all white, and his words were slightly reprimanding. Yang Jian pointed at Yuan Ling, who was floating in the immortal spring. His physical body had been destroyed, and the voice that came from his true spirit was extremely weak. Master, that Yi Xian is despicable and shameless. He bullied me too much. Not only did he insult my background, but he also blasphemed against the fairy of Guanghan. If I don't kill him, it will be difficult to eliminate the hatred in my heart. You evil creature. Perfected Yu Ding's hair and beard were all standing up, and great anger appeared on his face. He reprimanded, I've told you long ago that you shouldn't provoke the fairy of Guanghan. Although her cultivation is ordinary, she has a great relationship with the Wu tribe. Have you forgotten who shot down the 9 great golden crows during the Great Witch Demon Tribulation? You evil creature, it seems that I've been too arrogant and indulgent of you. Now, you've become arrogant. Do you know how vast the three realms of heaven and earth are? Do you really think that no one in the three realms dares to provoke the clan of Chan after their great victory in the battle of investiture of the gods? The more perfected Yu Ding spoke, the angrier he became. He kept pacing back and forth in the Golden Cloud's cave, and then pointed at the immortal spring, directly trapping Yang Jian's true spirit in it. From today onwards, you will condense your physical body in this immortal spring. I'll punish you by confining you for 10,000 years. When you step into the Daoyuo Jingxian, you can come out of seclusion. Perfected Yu Ding said with disappointment. Master, that Taoist Yi Xian must not be left alive. If I don't kill him, he will definitely kill me in the future. Master, please don't imprison me here. Yang Jian's voice was anxious, and he begged Perfected Yu Ding. You evil creature, why are you still so stupid? Although I don't know why your Grandmaster gave the Jade Clear Talisman to Yi Xian, I can already peek into the unfathomable mysteries of heaven. This Yi Xian must be a key figure in the immeasurable calamity. How can you kill him? He is only a primordial unity Xian immortal now, but he has already injured you to this extent. Although he attacked you sneakily, this also proves that this person is not easy to deal with. Don't provoke him in the future. Perfected Yu Ding was resolute and decisive. He did not give Yang Jian any room for negotiation. He turned and walked out of the Golden Cloud's cave. Outside the Golden Cloud's cave, Perfected Yu Ding looked distressed and sighed repeatedly. Yang Jian was his disciple, and he regarded him as his own son. Now that he was injured like this, how could Perfected Yu Ding not feel distressed? However, with the gradual improvement of his cultivation, Perfected Yu Ding increasingly felt his own insignificance and that the mysteries of heaven were really unpredictable. Pangu opened the sky, Hongjun preached, the three pure ones established the sect, Nuwa created man, the dragon phoenix calamity, the great war of witch demon, the three sovereigns ruled the world, the great war of gods. This world was too vast, and there were too many hidden uncertainties. Although Perfected Yu Ding was Daluo Jingxian, he knew that in fact, although he seemed to be supreme in this world, in the eyes of some people, he was just a chess piece. The world was a chessboard, and all living beings were chess pieces. Even the golden immortals of the great all-embracing heaven were no exception. His disciple was too arrogant. If he did not temper his temperament, he was afraid that in the future immeasurable calamity, he would really die and disappear from the world. Dongxing Divine Continent, Haoshuan Mountain. Haoshuan Mountain covered an area of 1,000,000 miles. In the mountain, there was a Taoist sect called Jiuhua Immortal. Its sect master called himself Jiuhua Xian Immortal, and he was an overlord in this area. However, Jiuhua Xian Immortal's body was a goshawk. Most of his disciples were demons who were dedicated to Taoism. Of course, there were also a large number of human cultivators. The Immortal Gate was wide open, and there was no discrimination in education. This was the principle that the Jiuhua Immortal sect believed in. On this day, the sky was high and the clouds were light. The sky was clear for thousands of miles. A gust of wind blew, bringing with it a rich fragrance of grass and trees. It made people feel refreshed and relaxed. At the foot of Haoshuan Mountain, more than 10 disciples of the Jiuhua Immortal sect were rushing back to the sect. These people were mostly young men and women. The highest cultivation level was only at the spirit severing stage, and the weakest was only at the golden core stage. Senior brothers, you guys, look. A young girl exclaimed and pointed at a patch of grass by the side of the road in panic. Everyone was stunned. They all looked at the grass and saw a person in the grass. His body was soaked in blood. The blood had already coagulated, and there was no sign of life around him. Chapter 264. A young man quickly arrived before this person and pushed aside the hair that covered this person's face, and then a handsome appearance appeared before his eyes. But under the probing of the young man, this person was already not breathing, and there wasn't the slightest trace of spirit light around this person's body. The young man's eyes spun as he ceaselessly searched this person's body. After an entire 10 breaths of time, the young man said with a dejected expression, "Truly unlucky. This fellow doesn't even have a single magic artifact in his possession. Senior brother Li, he's dead." A disciple of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect probed. The young man laughed with disdain and said, "What's so strange about a dead person in this 500,000 kilometers vast profound mountain? Look at his extremely damaged body, he was surely injured to such an extent by a demon beast and was exhausted here in the end. Alright, let's quickly return to the sect so that the elders won't be worried about us." The young man called out before leading the group of disciples of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect back to the sect. As for the corpse in the grass, these disciples naturally wouldn't spare it a second glance. After all, in this vast earthly immortal dimension, there was no lack of dead people, so these disciples could be considered to be accustomed to it. "Hey, Li Jianglu, why aren't you leaving?" A young woman frowned and reprimanded a young man behind her. "Huh? I'm coming. Li Jiangliu's figure was thin, his clothes were slightly simple, and there was a trace of immaturity on his face. His cultivation was merely at the golden core realm, and he seemed to be unable to bear it as he glanced at the corpse in the grass before quickly catching up to everyone. "Ha ha ha. A female disciple laughed with ridicule. Don't all of you know Jianglu? He has an extremely good heart. Even the death of a little rabbit made him sad for a long time. He probably saw how pitiful this person's death was and wanted to help bury it, right? Jianglu, senior brother Li isn't criticizing you, but you've already entered the sect for 10 years, yet you've only just stepped into the Golden Core realm. You have to know that the Outer Court Disciple competition is in 3 years. If you're unable to step into the nascent soul realm, then you'll be expelled from the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Senior brother Li reprimanded with displeasure. That's enough. What's the point of saying so much to this trash? With his current cultivation, how can he step into the nascent soul stage in 3 years? A senior sister said coldly and disdainfully. Li Jiangliu's face was pale while a wisp of mist appeared in his eyes. He forcefully restrained his tears from falling, and he lowered his head and followed behind everyone as they returned to the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Night fell, and the sky was filled with stars. A thin and weak figure flew through the air on a magic sword. However, his body was slightly unstable. It was obvious that his sword-wielding technique was not that proficient. Found it. Li Jiangliu's small face lit up with joy. He formed a sword seal and swooped down, directly landing beside a bush. After that, he quickly carried the corpse in the bush and rode his sword towards the distance again. In the back mountain of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect, on the Labor Peak. This was a desolate small forest. Under the illumination of the stars that filled the sky, Li Jiangliu's thin and weak figure was reflected. This young man was controlling his spirit sword to dig the ground, and it wasn't long before he dug out a 10m large pit. If this scene was seen by the disciples of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect, they would definitely scold him. A dignified disciple of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect had actually used the spirit sword in his hand to dig a pit. This was simply ruining the reputation of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Senior, it's fate that brought us together. I can't bear to see Senior's corpse abandoned in the wilderness, so I can only dig a simple grave for you. You can rest in peace in the netherworld. Li Jianglu bowed 3 times to the corpse while muttering. Obviously, this wasn't the first time he'd done this. After paying his respects to the nameless corpse on the ground, Li Jianglu was about to bury the corpse. However, before he could make a move, the nameless corpse on the ground suddenly moved. The pale palm silently pressed down on the youth's bare feet, and an extremely weak voice sounded out at this moment. Water. Water. Ah. The youth, Li Jianglu, screamed in shock. It was extremely ear-piercing in this empty small forest, but he immediately covered his mouth and tried his best to calm himself down. He's still alive. The youth, Li Jianglu, muttered to himself with a slightly complicated expression. However, he still carried the nameless corpse on his back, held up his sword, and walked towards his residence. 9 Radiance Immortal Sect, Labor Peak. There was a simple stone house and a bed made of solid wood. Besides that, there was nothing else. Yi Xian's countenance was ghastly pale while his breathing was extremely weak. He was lying on the bed in a coma. As he looked at Yi Xian's ghastly pale and colorless face, Li Jiangliu's eyes were slightly fearful. However, he still pulled open the water bottle and carefully fed the clear spring water bit by bit into Yi Xian's mouth. Cough. A light cough sounded out from Yi Xian's mouth, and there were even traces of blood that flowed out from the corners of his mouth along with the spring water. He tried his best to open his eyes while the feeling of a myriad of needles piercing his soul came from within, causing Yi Xian's face to warp to the extreme. Pain that tore at his soul caused Yi Xian to forcefully endure it and not howl. He tried his best to support his arms with the intention of standing up. Bang! Yi Xian collapsed weakly on the bed. Large amounts of cold sweat drenched his body. It was obvious that it was extremely strenuous for him to even move now. Yang Jian, what a good destructive immortal light. Yi Xian muttered coldly. The killing intent contained in his voice caused the young man's heart to turn cold. He looked at Yi Xian with even more fear in his eyes. Li Jianglu mustered up his courage and came to Yi Xian's side. His voice was slightly trembling as he said, "You don't move around. Your injuries are too severe." Yi Xian thought for a moment before he suppressed the violent killing intent in his heart. His eyes narrowed as he looked at Li Jianglu. He knew that it was this young man who had saved him. "Little brother, what's your name and where is this place?" Yi Xian asked calmly. "My name is Li Jianglu. I'm an outer court disciple of the Nine Radiance Immortal sect." "This is the labor peak of the Nine Radiance Immortal sect," the young man answered truthfully. However, his gaze towards Yi Xian was slightly curious. "The Nine Radiance Immortal sect?" Yi Xian muttered as he tried his best to recall the scene of his last battle with Yang Jian. Suddenly, Yi Xian recalled that he had used a forbidden technique to become one with the heaven-destroying halberd to barely block Yang Jian's destructive immortal light. After that, he had fallen from the celestial court to the lower realm. "Looks like this is undoubtedly the Earth Immortal realm," Yi Xian muttered to himself. He heaved a sigh of relief. If he had remained in the celestial court with his current injuries, the Jade Emperor would definitely not have let him off. Li Jianglu opened his mouth to ask something as he watched Yi Xian fall into deep thought. However, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He only looked at Yi Xian with a doubtful gaze. At this moment, Yi Xian was constantly inspecting his own body. His brows were tightly knitted together. There was no immortal qi left in his body. Even the slightest use of the power of his primordial spirit caused him extreme pain. Clearly, his injuries were too severe in the battle with Yang Jian. Right now, it was extremely difficult for him to even move his body, let alone use a trace of immortal qi. It was even more difficult for him to open the Sumeru space. Chapter 265. "Little brother, I need some medicinal pills to heal my injuries. I wonder if you can." Yi Xian wanted to say something, but hesitated. Asking him to ask for a pill from a junior was indeed a bit embarrassing for Yi Xian. However, he was currently heavily injured. If he didn't borrow the spirit energy from the pill, his injuries would only worsen. From this, it could be seen that Yang Jian had Taoist Yuding to heal him, while Yi Xian could only rely on himself. This was the benefit of having a sect as a backer. Medicinal pills? Li Jianglu bit his lips slightly with hesitation on his face. As an outer court disciple of the Nine Radiance Immortal sect, the sect would distribute 3 portions of spirit energy powder every year. However, he was cowardly by nature. 2 of the 3 portions of spirit energy powder had been taken away by his senior brothers and sisters. The last portion was the foundation of his cultivation. If he gave it to Yi Xian, he would not be able to consume any more spirit energy powder this year. Yi Xian was experienced and had sharp eyes. He could tell with a glance that the young man was in a difficult position. This made him shake his head helplessly. He knew that he was forcing the young man. "This is spirit energy powder. I only have 1 portion. I hope it can be of some help to your injuries." Li Jianglu carefully took out a jade bottle from his bosom and handed it to Yi Xian with a pained expression. Clearly, this spirit energy powder was his most precious item. Looking at the pained expression on the young man's face, Yi Xian looked at the young man with a strange gaze. Then, he said calmly, "I can't move now. Please help me consume this spirit energy powder." "Huh. Okay. Li Jianglu opened the jade bottle and a fragrance drifted out. Although he was extremely reluctant, he still carefully fed the liquid in the bottle to Yi Xian. "Okay." Yi Xian let out a muffled groan as the liquid in his mouth transformed into a strand of spiritual energy that spread throughout his limbs and veins. This caused his numb body to feel extreme pain, but it caused a trace of joy to flash through Yi Xian's eyes. In fact, this spiritual energy powder was just the most common spiritual medicine. If it was under normal circumstances, Yi Xian wouldn't have cared about it at all. But now that he was seriously injured, this little bit of spiritual energy was enough to bring out the vitality in his body. "Little brother, let me borrow your cultivation." Suddenly, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the bed. A spiritual light grew in his palm, and he pressed his palm against Li Jiangliu's dantian. Before Li Jianglu could resist, the spiritual energy in the child's body surged violently into Yi Xian's body. "No! No!" Feeling the cultivation in his body crazily surging towards Yi Xian, Li Jiangliu's face turned pale. He wanted to escape from Yi Xian's control, but Yi Xian used the spiritual energy of the spiritual energy powder to execute the tribulation immortal technique. Although the young man was at the Golden Core realm, how could he resist Yi Xian? The young man's cultivation fell from the Golden Core realm to the Foundation Establishment realm, and from the Foundation Establishment realm to the 9th level of the Qi Refinement realm. When the young man discovered this terrifying situation, he fainted in grief. "Open!" Ignoring the young man's fainting, Yi Xian formed a seal with 2 fingers. A speck of immortal light was extremely weak, but it still opened the Sumeru space. Yi Xian did not dare to be negligent. He quickly took out a large number of immortal pills from the Sumeru space, grabbed a handful, and threw them into his mouth. Bang! 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 It was as if thunder from the 9 heavens exploded, and it was as if the waves of the vast sea were attacking. When a large number of immortal pills exploded in Yi Xian's body, unimaginable spiritual energy quickly repaired Yi Xian's body and primordial spirit, allowing him to enter cultivation. The next morning, when the young man, Li Jianglu, slowly opened his eyes, he looked around blankly. When he noticed that Yi Xian was looking at him with a smile, he instantly jumped up from the ground. He even stomped his feet and cursed at Yi Xian angrily. "I saved you out of kindness. Not only did I give you spirit energy powder, but you sucked my cultivation." When did I suck your cultivation?" Yi Xian said calmly. My cultivation." The young man circulated his cultivation technique and was shocked to discover that the golden core in his body was still there. He had even stepped into the mid-stage of the golden core realm from the early stage of the golden core realm. This caused his expression to change drastically. He suddenly looked at Yi Xian with extreme surprise in his eyes. What's going on?" Li Jianglu clearly remembered that before he fell unconscious, his cultivation had been absorbed by the person before him. But why did his cultivation not fall after he woke up, and it had instead increased greatly? "Li Jianglu, quickly come out and get to work." Suddenly, before the young man could ask Yi Xian anything, a shout sounded out from outside the stone house. This caused Li Jiangliu's expression to change, and he hurriedly instructed Yi Xian. "This is the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Don't leave if your identity is unknown. If the members of the sect notice you, then not only will you suffer calamity, I'll be implicated as well." The young man, Li Jianglu, instructed repeatedly, and then he hurriedly tidied up his clothes before pushing open the stone door and walking swiftly towards the outside world. Along with the young man's departure, Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and he fell into deep thought. Last night, he'd absorbed the young man's cultivation and barely opened up the Sumeru space before he withdrew a large amount of immortal pills and consumed them. Even though he'd relied on the energy of the immortal pills to stabilize his injuries, it would at least take a few years for him to recover his peak cultivation. Moreover, if a great enemy came during this period of time, then with his heavily injured body, it would definitely be extremely dangerous. Moreover, the 9 Radiance Immortal sect was an ordinary sect in the earthly immortal world, and it just happened to be his place of concealment. Yi Xian knew that he and Yang Jian were irreconcilable enemies. Yang Jian would absolutely not let him off, and he wouldn't let Yang Jian off as well. So, only one of them could survive. As the saying goes, caution is the parent of safety. Yang Jian was the #1 disciple of the third generation of Chan school, and he had 12 golden immortals and senior and junior brothers. Every single one of them was an extraordinary figure in the heavens and the earth, whereas, he was heavily injured now, so he absolutely couldn't reveal himself in the outside world. If Yang Jian's best friends wanted to annihilate him, then with his heavily injured body, how could he be a match for these people? Moreover, Yi Xian had an extremely great premonition that this old dog, the Jade Emperor, would definitely send someone to search for his whereabouts. If the Jade Emperor found out that he was heavily injured, then the Jade Emperor would definitely hit him while he was down. Endure. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed. For the time being, he would endure in the Jiuhua Immortal sect. With the immortal scripture that he cultivated, he would definitely be able to return to his peak in just a few years. Moreover, after the battle with Yang Jian, Yi Xian felt extremely pressured. If he hadn't used a trick to injure Yang Jian first, then even with the heaven-destroying halberd in his hand, he probably wouldn't have been Yang Jian's match. Cultivation, he had to increase his cultivation. This was the most important thing for him. So-called schemes and tricks were just small tricks. This time, both he and Yang Jian were heavily injured. Next time, Yang Jian wouldn't be so careless. Yang Jian, just you wait. The next time we meet, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed as a cold light flashed through them. He had already formulated a detailed plan in his mind. His intention to kill Yang Jian was as clear as day. First of all, Yi Xian knew that what he needed to do now was to heal his injuries. Only when his cultivation returned to its peak could he carry out his plan to increase his cultivation step by step. Chapter 266. The sun rose and the moon set, and the stars moved. Days passed, and half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian's injuries improved day by day, and his cultivation recovered to the heavenly immortal realm. However, he was still very far from the grand unity mysterious immortal realm, and according to his estimation, it would take at least 2 more years. During this half a year of time, Yi Xian stayed within the young man's stone house, and it could be said that he'd truly not left his house. Besides consuming immortal pills and meditating every day, he had nothing else to do. Yi Xian refused to leave, and Li Jianglu was deeply afraid that someone would notice Yi Xian's existence. So, he could be said to be absent-minded every day, and he was even unable to concentrate on his cultivation. Fortunately, Li Jianglu stayed at the labor peak. Even though there were many people here, they were all at the lowest level of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Besides completing the tiring labor every day, they would return to their residences to cultivate, so there was naturally no one that was bored to the point of coming to Li Jiangliu's residence to investigate. On this day, Yi Xian woke up from his cultivation, and he saw Li Jianglu pushing open the stone door in a dispirited manner. Not only were there some bruises on his face, there were even a few streaks of tears. Obviously, he'd suffered some sort of grievance. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't ask him about it, and his expression was indifferent as he continued to consume a medicinal pill and cultivate. On the other hand, the young man directly disregarded Yi Xian. He wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes, and then he sat cross-legged on a meditation cushion and entered into cultivation as well. In the beginning, the young man was very curious and asked about Yi Xian's origins. But along with the passage of time, the young man noticed that Yi Xian was an extremely cold and indifferent person. Besides speaking a few words with him after he woke up, Yi Xian paid no attention to him after that. Li Jianglu wasn't stupid. Conversely, he was extremely intelligent. He knew that Yi Xian was a cultivator, and his cultivation was definitely extraordinary. He intended to seek guidance from Yi Xian on the problems he faced in his cultivation, but Yi Xian paid no attention to him at all. So, the young man could only sigh helplessly and stop disturbing Yi Xian. Clang! 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 All of a sudden, 18 bell rings sounded out successively from the outside world, and it instantly caused the entire Haoshuan mountain to fall into chaos. Li Jianglu, who was in the midst of cultivation, quickly opened his eyes, and astonishment appeared on his face. He didn't dare be negligent as he hurriedly left his residence, and he raised his sword to fly towards the 9 Radiance Hall. Inside the stone house, Yi Xian frowned slightly. When her eyes turned, she saw a group of heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals heading towards the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. The person in the lead was Venus Taibai. Old man Taibai actually came to this tiny 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Could it be that he noticed that I was hiding here to recuperate? Yi Xian frowned and said in a low voice. That's not right. If he really knew that I was here, he would definitely report it directly to the Jade Emperor. How could he appear in front of these immortal cultivators? Yi Xian said with certainty, overturning his previous judgment. The crowd on 9 Radiance Peak was surging. With the 9 Radiance Mysterious Immortal in the lead, numerous elders stood at the side, and the tens of thousands of disciples behind him bowed as they stood on 9 Radiance Peak as if they were waiting for the arrival of a great figure. The 9 Radiance Mysterious Immortal was a black-clothed old man, and his cultivation was at the Mysterious Immortal realm. Even though he wasn't ranked among the immortals, he was still a loose immortal in the earthly immortal world, and he was free and unfettered and wasn't restrained by the celestial court. However, the 9 Radiance Mysterious Immortal's heart was heavy today, and his eyes were slightly drifting. He truly couldn't understand why the 9 Radiance Immortal sect that he established wasn't even worth mentioning in the earthly immortal world, so why would Venus Taibai from the heaven dimension come here? The Jade Emperor of Virtuous Virtue, Supreme Haotian, has decreed. Venus Taibai's body was covered in resplendent immortal light, and he naturally had the dignity of a great immortal of the celestial court. He spread out a golden decree in his hand and read it out in a clear voice. The content of the decree was very simple. It was just an announcement to some sects in the earthly immortal world that if anyone found Yi Xian's traces, regardless of whether he was alive or dead, as long as they reported to the celestial court, they would be heavily rewarded. Immortal elixirs, spirit herbs, cultivation techniques, and secret manuals could be said to be everything. As long as someone could report Yi Xian's whereabouts, the celestial court's rewards would be extremely generous. Venus Taibai was also just going through the formalities. The 9 Radiance Immortal sect was just one of the major sects, and he had no idea that Yi Xian was actually hiding in the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. This is the appearance of the Demon Slayer Saint Lord. If you find him, you must report to the celestial court as soon as possible. Venus Taibai said majestically. He threw out a void jade slip and led the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals to the next sect. Farewell, immortal emissary. Jiuhua Xian bowed to Venus Taibai and lowered his posture to the extreme. At this moment, the stone in his heart quietly fell to the ground. As Venus Taibai left, Jiuhua Xian took out a jade slip and a beam of immortal light rippled out. It directly revealed Yi Xian's appearance in the void. He looked back at the disciples and said, "This is the Demon Slayer Saint Lord. If you go down the mountain and find him, you must inform the sect immediately. We will definitely reward you handsomely." Senior brother, who is this Demon Slayer Saint Lord? He actually made the Jade Emperor issue a decree and Venus Taibai personally came down to the lower worlds to find him. He, you don't know this, right? Let me tell you, this Demon Slayer Saint Lord's real name is Yi Xian. A few days ago, he fought the war god of 3 realms, Yang Jian. He actually destroyed Yang Jian's physical body and true spirit fled to the lower worlds. However, this Taoist Yi Xian didn't have it easy either. He was also severely injured and no one knows where he is now. If you ask me, the Earth Immortal realm is vast and boundless. Unless we were extremely lucky in our previous lives, how can we meet this Yi Xian? I heard that the Celestial Court even gave a 9 transformation golden pill to find this true cultivator Yi. This 9 transformation golden pill is a precious treasure in the Celestial Court. If a mortal consumes it, they can become immortals. I wonder who will be able to obtain this great fortune. The disciples of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect discussed successively, and it instantly became extremely noisy. However, no one noticed that the young man, Li Jianglu, stared fixedly at Yi Xian's appearance in the sky, and his entire body became extremely stunned. At this moment, Li Jiangliu's mind shook to the extreme, and his face flushed red to the extreme. Because he was extremely sure that the appearance of this Taoist he'd saved was exactly the same as this demon slayer Saint Lord. No, it wasn't exactly the same, it was the same person. The young man, Li Jianglu, had an extremely great impulse at this moment. He really wanted to step out from the crowd and inform the 9 Radiance mysterious immortal about Yi Xian. However, he'd just taken a step forward when he sighed helplessly and didn't do it in the end. A 9 transformation golden pill, a cultivation technique, and being ranked among the immortals. All of these were Li Jiangliu's dreams. However, when he recalled Yi Xian's cold and indifferent appearance, he was completely able to sense that this true cultivator of the celestial court didn't want others to know that he was hiding in the 9 Radiance Immortal sect at all. Li Jianglu was still a young man after all, and his thoughts were extremely pure and kind. Since he hadn't obtained Yi Xian's permission, it was better for him to not make a decision first. He intended to make a decision after he returned to his residence and asked for Yi Xian's opinion. The young man didn't know. Fortunately, he wasn't blinded by greed. If he really leaked Yi Xian's information, then only death would await him. Chapter 267. At the same time, Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged in the stone house. His face was expressionless, and no one could tell what he was thinking. However, the killing intent surrounding him was gradually fading away. Although Yi Xian had yet to recover from his serious injuries, he had now recovered to the level of a celestial immortal. His pair of Dharma eyes naturally saw this scene. This young man is quite interesting. Yi Xian smiled. His body gradually turned illusory and disappeared from the stone house. A full 2 hours passed. When young Li Jianglu returned to his residence, he was slightly stunned when he found that there was no one in the stone house. Then, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. It seemed that perfected cultivator Yi knew that the celestial court was looking for him and had left without saying goodbye. Although young Li Jianglu was a little disappointed, knowing that he had lost a great opportunity, he was simple-minded and did not regret it too much. After all, he also knew that Yi Xian, a great immortal of the celestial court, would not care about a mortal like him. Behind the handyman peak, Yi Xian opened up a cave residence and then blocked it with a huge rock. He did not want anyone to disturb him this time. He would only come out of the cave residence after he recovered from his injuries. From this, it could be seen that Yi Xian was treading on thin ice when it came to cultivation. He would never put himself in danger. The sun rose and the moon set. The stars moved. Time was a merciless butcher's knife. For mortals, it was a sharp weapon that hastened their deaths. For immortal cultivators, it was also the motivation to move forward. 10 years was not a long time, but it was not short either. However, in the vast Earth immortal world, 10 years was just a blink of an eye. On this day, the sky was high and the clouds were light. A ray of sun rose from the east, illuminating the world. The cave residence where Yi Xian was in seclusion was covered with weeds. No one would have thought that such an earth-shattering figure was hidden in the cave residence. All of a sudden, bang! With a loud bang, the boulder blocking the entrance of the cave exploded. A beam of tiny immortal light rippled out from the cave, and a slender figure slowly walked out. Yi Xian was dressed in a black Taoist robe, with tiny celestial light surrounding his body. His black hair fell behind his head, and when he opened and closed his eyes, tiny celestial light flowed in his eyes. Wherever his gaze passed, the void would be slightly distorted. Yi Xian stretched out his arms and breathed in the morning glow. The tiny celestial light around him slowly dissipated. He no longer had any power, as if he had turned into an ordinary person. I didn't expect that this seclusion would take 10 years. Yi Xian sighed. 10 years ago, Yi Xian had sealed himself in the cave residence. According to his estimation, with the help of a large number of elixirs, he would only need 2 years to recover his cultivation and return to his peak state. In fact, after 2 years of seclusion, he had indeed recovered from his injuries. However, Yi Xian did not expect that just as he recovered his cultivation, his Tai Xian Immortal cultivation would increase rapidly until he broke through to the middle stage of Tai Xian Immortal. This made Yi Xian very excited. Yi Xian instantly understood that the reason why he could break through to the middle stage of Tai Xian Immortal must have something to do with the battle with Yang Jian. In that life and death battle, his state of mind and cultivation had significantly improved. After understanding this, Yi Xian did not dare to neglect it. In the remaining years, he focused on improving his cultivation. It was not until he stepped into the late stage of Tai Xian Immortal that the potential in his body was finally exhausted. Only then did he break out of seclusion. However, this seclusion took him 10 years. This made Yi Xian sigh slightly. Time was really merciless. From this seclusion, Yi Xian also understood a principle. There were only 3 ways to quickly improve one's cultivation. The first way was to gain enlightenment from a life and death battle. The second way was to enter a state of enlightenment. The third way was what Yi Xian had always wanted to do. It was to consume a large number of heavenly holy items and immortal elixirs. Of course, Yi Xian also had a fourth way. This way was to use the Calamity Transcender technique that he cultivated. He could devour the divine powers of the Immortal's Tao fruits and make them his own. This would also allow his cultivation to increase rapidly. In 10 years, Yi Xian's cultivation had recovered and he had even stepped into the late stage of Tai Xian Immortal. He was only 1 step away from stepping into the Tai Golden Immortal realm. However, Yi Xian also understood that if he did not use the heaven-destroying halberd, he would still have to tread on thin ice in the Earth Immortal realm. One had to know that the Earth Immortal realm was vast and boundless. There were countless Tongtian demons and immortals. Although the celestial court was high and mighty, it was not worth mentioning when compared to the Earth Immortal realm. Yi Xian sorted out his thoughts. He already had a clear direction. A cold murderous intent quietly flashed across his eyes. I wonder how that young man is now. Yi Xian murmured to himself. He merged into the void and walked slowly towards the servant peak. Yi Xian was a person who would repay kindness and revenge. Back then, Li Jianglu had saved his life. Yi Xian had always remembered this favor in his heart. When he left back then, he did not leave any opportunities for this young man. It was only because he did not want to expose his whereabouts and attract the attention of others. However, now that his cultivation had recovered to its peak, this favor must be repaid. Servant Peak. The sound of gongs, drums, and firecrackers rang in the sky. Every stone house had a large Shi character pasted on it. Thousands of servant disciples were toasting and cheering from time to time. There were a total of 99 peaks in the Haoshuan mountain. The servant peak was only one of them. The other 98 peaks were also holding banquets. This made the entire Jiuhua Immortal sect extremely lively. Yi Xian walked slowly through the sky, and no one was able to notice his tracks. Up until he arrived before the stone house that Li Jianglu resided in, he noticed that spiderwebs had already formed on the stone door. Obviously, no one had lived in this stone house for many years. Yi Xian frowned lightly. As his palm flicked through the sky, he directly restrained a servant disciple. Before this servant could let out a sharp cry, Yi Xian shot a strand of immortal light into the space between this person's brows, and then he executed a soul-searching technique to directly read this person's memories. After an entire few tens of breaths of time, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He'd already understood the cause and effect of this matter, and he casually struck out with a strand of immortal light that directly transformed this servant disciple into ash. After that, he walked slowly through the sky towards Nine Radiance Peak. From the memories of this servant disciple, Yi Xian obtained some information about Li Jianglu. After he left all those years ago, this young man had broken through to the nascent soul realm 2 years later, and he'd even won the championship in the outer court disciple competition in one go and was directly taken into the inner court. Yi Xian wasn't surprised that the young man had broken through to the nascent soul realm. Because when he was recuperating all those years ago, the immortal pills he consumed weren't able to be completely absorbed, and some impurities were expelled from his body. So, this naturally benefited this young man. However, according to the memories of this servant disciple, after Li Jianglu entered the inner court, he wasn't as glorious as he'd imagined, and he suffered an unimaginable calamity on the 5th year. Not only was his cultivation crippled, he'd even been reduced to the lowest medicine slave on Nine Radiance Peak. Today was the day that exalted immortal Jiuhua's daughter was getting married, so the various peaks had held banquets and created such a joyous scene. Yi Xian didn't feel much sympathy towards the young man's encounter, nor did he feel pity in his heart. Because every single person walked their own path. Yi Xian only wanted to repay the young man's life-saving grace and give the young man a fortuitous encounter before leaving the Jiuhua immortal sect. He didn't think about anything else besides this. Chapter 268. Nine Radiance Peak. It was a hubbub of voices, and it was extremely festive. There were thousands of cultivators shuttling back and forth. The Nine Radiance Hall at the center was even filled with people, and congratulatory voices resounded from time to time. Today was the day of the marriage of the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal, and it could be said to be a grand occasion for the Nine Radiance Immortal sect. All the cultivation sects in the surroundings naturally came to congratulate them. The Nine Radiance Profound Immortal was laughing heartily as he welcomed and sent off his fellow Taoists. Speaking of the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal, his true form was a goshawk. He took 1,000 years to transform and 10,000 years to attain the Tao. He believed in the Tao teachings of the Jie school. Even though the Jie school had already declined, a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse, and not everyone could afford to offend the Jie school. This allowed the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal to establish his Tao teachings and establish a sect in the 500,000 kilometers Haoshuan mountain. He even got married and had children, so he could be considered to be free and unfettered. The wind was calm and the clouds were untainted by dust. Yi Xian walked through the void and the scene on Nine Radiance Peak entered his eyes. He could be said to have no interest in these low-level cultivators. If he really did have some interest, it would be because the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal was able to enter his eyes. It wasn't that the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal was very strong, but only the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal had entered the immortal realm amongst these cultivators. If he swallowed the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal's Tao fruit, he would be able to improve his cultivation. Since the battle with Yang Jian, Yi Xian had completely realized the inadequacy of his cultivation. There was no need to think about immortal pills as he didn't have the fortune to enjoy them. The only way to quickly improve his cultivation was to execute the Tribulation Transcender technique and devour the Tao fruit of others. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly while a wisp of bloody light flashed through his eyes from time to time. His gaze towards the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal revealed traces of killing intent. However, Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and didn't make a move in the end. After all, he'd come to look for Li Jianglu, and it wouldn't be too late to annihilate the Nine Radiance Profound Immortal after he repaid this kid's kindness. Yi Xian made a decision in his heart. In the pill pavilion of the Jiuhua Hall. The earthen fire burned fiercely, and the cauldron sizzled. Below the cauldron, a red-robed Taoist was performing hand seals, and he was constantly putting some spirit herbs into the cauldron. There were also 2 herb slaves waving their wind and fire fans. Clearly, they were concocting a cauldron of pills. Turn on the stove. As soon as the red-robed Taoist finished speaking, the two medicine slaves didn't dare to be negligent. They worked together to lift the lid of the pill furnace. A fragrant smell drifted out from the pill furnace. The red-robed Taoist was overjoyed. He waved his hand in the air and a dozen pills were sucked toward him. Good, good, good. This concentrated fragrance pill has a round color and a nice aroma. It seems like the refinement this time was very successful. The red-robed Taoist observed the pill in his hand and his face lit up with joy. Test the medicine. The red-robed Taoist's smile disappeared. His voice was filled with malice as he threw a pill at a medicine slave. The medicine slave trembled as he caught it. Bang! The medicine slave's body trembled like a sieve. He suddenly knelt down in front of the red-robed Taoist and begged in a trembling voice, Grand Master, please spare my life. This concentrated fragrance pill is a highly toxic substance that can harm the foundation of evil people. Before the medicine slave could finish begging, the red-robed Taoist said with a gloomy expression, Could it be that you want me to feed you? Or do you want your soul to disperse here? All right, I'll consume this pill for him. Suddenly, the other medicine slave spoke with a flat voice. He directly seized the concentrated fragrance pill from this medicine slave and swallowed it. The entire process seemed to be extremely calm. Good, good, good. The red-robed Taoist stroked his beard and roared with laughter when he saw this scene. Jianglu, I wonder what fortuitous encounter you obtained. You're able to survive after consuming 100 types of poison. You can be considered to be a treasure of our 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Big brother Jianglu, thank you, thank you. The medicine slave ceaselessly kowtowed to Li Jianglu while his face carried an extremely grateful expression. If it wasn't for Li Jianglu consuming this medicinal pill for him, then he would probably suffer an extremely miserable fate. Grand Master, Jianglu has a request. After 10 years, the young man from before had vanished, and Li Jianglu had transformed into a young man. However, his eyes were withered and lifeless while his entire body emanated a dispirited aura. It was as if everything in the world didn't matter to him anymore. However, at this moment, Li Jianglu's eyes glowed with a wisp of hope, and he was looking at the red-robed Taoist with a pleading gaze. This caused the red-robed Taoist to frown slightly. Obviously, he knew what Li Jianglu wanted to ask of him. Jianglu, you've already followed me for 5 years, and you've even tested medicine for me for 5 years. It can be said that your contributions are great. However, you must know that you've committed a crime, and the sect master has even ordered you to not leave this pill pavilion. I'm unable to agree to your request. As he gazed at Li Jianglu's dim and lifeless eyes, the red-robed Taoist was deeply afraid that Li Jianglu would seek death. After that, he patted Li Jianglu on the shoulder and consoled him, Jianglu, even though you've committed a great mistake all those years ago, so long as you properly test medicine for me, I'll definitely assist you in recovering your cultivation 100 years from now. I'll also plead with the sect master to take you back into the sect. You don't have to be a lowly medicine slave in this pill pavilion. Grand Master, today is the day of senior sister Kai's wedding. I only want to see her one last time. Please grant my wish. Li Jianglu knelt and kowtowed as he spoke with a sorrowful voice. Humph. The red-robed Taoist's expression changed when he saw how tactless Li Jianglu was, and he said coldly, Li Jianglu, don't go too far. Kai's wedding today is a great matter of my 9 Radiance Immortal sect. If I let you out of this pill pavilion, wouldn't I be punished by the sect master? There's no need to say anything else. I won't agree to it. The red-robed Taoist flicked his sleeve and left. His attitude was extremely cold and fierce. If it wasn't for the fact that Li Jianglu still had some use, he wouldn't pay any attention to such an extremely lowly medicine slave. Within the pill pavilion, a row of clear tears flowed from Li Jianglu's eyes as he sat on the ground in a daze. On the other hand, the medicine slave by his side consoled softly. Big brother Jianglu, this is our fate. You should accept it. Ha, ha. Suddenly, Li Jianglu roared with laughter, and as he laughed, tears flowed from his eyes. He muttered, "Fate? If that great immortal from all those years ago was able to take me as his disciple, then how could I, Li Jianglu, take this tiny 9 Radiance immortal sect seriously?" As he gazed at Li Jianglu's insane appearance, the medicine slave sighed and said, "Big brother Jianglu, quickly wake up. You've already mentioned it countless times in the past few years. If you've really saved the life of an immortal, then how could you have fallen to such an extent? You don't believe me?" Li Jianglu laughed hysterically and said, "Do you know why I'm still working hard to live? Because I believe he'll come back for me. I believe he'll come back for me." Li Jianglu seemed to have gone mad, and he seemed to have fallen into some sort of obsession. This caused the medicine slave by his side to sigh helplessly, and he felt that Li Jianglu's mind had already developed some problems after testing medicines for so many years. Space surged while ripples spread out. Yi Xian took a step forward and silently watched Li Jianglu. From the beginning until the end, he'd witnessed Li Jianglu's encounter, but there wasn't much fluctuation in his heart. Chapter 269. Every single person walked their own path. It was either good or bad, sad or miserable. Some stood proudly in the 9 heavens while others were lowly like ants. It was also Yi Xian's sudden appearance that caused the expressions of the herb servant and Li Jianglu to change drastically. However, when Li Jianglu saw Yi Xian's appearance, his entire body was instantly stunned on the spot, and his body couldn't help but tremble. "I'll repay the kindness of all those years ago today. Come with me." Yi Xian spoke calmly in a carefree manner that wasn't tainted by dust. Who are you?" The herb servant spoke with astonishment. Bang! Suddenly, Li Jianglu knelt on the ground and ceaselessly kowtowed to Yi Xian while tears flowed out from his eyes without end, and even his voice was trembling to the extreme. "True monarch, I knew you would return." As he gazed at Li Jianglu's trembling body, Yi Xian's expression was calm, and he said in a low voice, "I must repay the kindness of saving my life. This is the good karma between us, and I've specially come today to repay this kindness." His palm and fingers flicked through the air, and it transformed into a shadow. Yi Xian struck out with a strand of immortal light that covered Li Jianglu's body, and he was already prepared to bring this kid away. "True monarch, please be merciful and take him away with you." Li Jianglu pleaded loudly to Yi Xian, and the herb servant instantly came to an understanding. He ceaselessly kowtowed to Yi Xian and begged Yi Xian to save him. Unfortunately, Yi Xian's expression remained unchanged, and he said calmly, "I've come to take you away today because I owe you a favor. As for the life and death of others, what does it have to do with me?" Yi Xian struck out with immortal light and instantly brought Li Jianglu along to vanish from the pill pavilion. On the other hand, what Li Jianglu didn't know was that after the two of them vanished, the herb servant's expression turned gloomy while his fists were clenched tightly, and his eyes were filled with extreme unwillingness and rage. "This won't do. Li Jianglu was saved, so the martial ancestor will definitely be furious. Without Li Jianglu blocking the medicine for me, I'm afraid I won't be able to live for 3 days." The medicine servant spoke with a trembling voice. Then, he quickly knocked on the door of the pill pavilion, hoping to summon the red-robed Taoist and tell him that Li Jianglu had been rescued. On 9 Radiance Peak, Yi Xian's body was enveloped in immortal light as he strolled through space. Li Jianglu followed closely behind him under his guidance, and when he saw the wedding banquet below, a wisp of sorrow appeared in his eyes. "True monarch, please wait for a moment. This disciple wishes to see senior sister Kai, one last time," Li Jianglu pleaded with a trembling voice. When he heard Li Jianglu's words, Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "It's the love between a man and a woman again. How boring. Since you want to make a final farewell, I'll fulfill your wish." Yi Xian sat cross-legged in the air without saying a word. However, when his eyes opened and closed, a trace of indifference flashed past them. Yi Xian had searched through the memories of the odd-job disciple Kai'er that Li Jianglu spoke of, so he naturally had some understanding of this woman. Kai'er was the daughter of a 9 Radiance profound immortal. Her talent in cultivation was ordinary, but her appearance was extremely beautiful. She could be said to be a rare beauty. Moreover, it wasn't strange that Li Jianglu was infatuated with her. Li Jianglu bowed towards Yi Xian gratefully, and then he stood silently by Yi Xian's side as he waited for the appearance of his sweetheart. With Yi Xian by his side and his technique covering the sky, no one noticed their existence. 2 hours later, a pair of newlyweds walked out from the 9 Radiance Hall amidst the sounds of firecrackers. Kai'er wore a wedding robe with 9 phoenixes. Her skin was fair and moist, and every frown and smile of hers was breathtaking. Beside her was a valiant young man in the attire of a bridegroom. He was holding Lu Kai'er's hand as he thanked the guests that had come. Why Yan Yunfei? Why is it him? Li Jiangliu's face instantly turned ghastly pale when he saw such a scene. He clenched his fists tightly while he gnashed his teeth to the point they creaked. His gaze towards Yan Yunfei was filled with extreme hatred. 5 years ago, it was Yan Yunfei who'd crippled his cultivation during the sect competition. After that, a string of inconceivable events occurred, and he was punished by the sect and sent to the Pill Pavilion to become a lowly medicine slave. Li Jianglu had never imagined that the woman he loved the most would actually marry his enemy. Why? Senior sister Kai, why did you marry him? Li Jianglu muttered in a sorrowful manner while his eyes were filled with extreme unwillingness. Yi Xian smiled in disdain as he looked at Li Jiangliu's dejected appearance. Another pedantic person that's trapped by love. It looks like Li Jianglu still doesn't understand that his current state was greatly related to this woman. You've saved my life, so I can grant you a wish. I can give you everything you want. Yi Xian spoke calmly. What do I want? Li Jianglu was stunned as he muttered. A supreme cultivation, a woman you love, and the reverence everyone in the 9 Radiance Immortal sect has for you. But I have to tell you that you only have this one chance. I hope you can consider it carefully. Once I've returned your kindness, there'll be nothing between us anymore. Whether you live or die in the future has nothing to do with me. Yi Xian spoke tirelessly and left the choice in Li Jiangliu's hands. As for how Li Jianglu chose, it was entirely up to him. Li Jiangliu's face flushed red when he heard Yi Xian, and he really wanted to agree. However, when he saw Yi Xian's unfathomable eyes, he swallowed the words that were just about to leave his mouth. Because he saw a trace of disappointment and disdain in Yi Xian's eyes. This caused Li Jiangliu's excited heart to calm down completely. It was as if there was a voice in the unseen world telling him that if he really chose in this way, then he would probably live in regret for his entire lifetime. As he looked at Li Jianglu, who remained silent, Yi Xian smiled indifferently, and then a speck of immortal light pointed at Li Jianglu. It instantly enveloped Li Jianglu within it, and then an unimaginably terrifying force filled Li Jiangliu's extraordinary meridians. This strand of immortal energy can help you conceal yourself, and it'll even allow you to possess the strength of 3 heavenly immortals. Even a 9 Radiance mysterious immortal won't be able to notice your existence. If you've made up your mind, then come look for me on Heaven's End Peak. Yi Xian glanced deeply at Li Jianglu before his entire body vanished in space. On Heaven's End Peak. Yi Xian sat cross-legged while looking at Li Jianglu, who stood in the distance, and he said with a strange voice, "What a petty and stupid love. Don't disappoint me." Actually, Yi Xian was entirely capable of bestowing Li Jianglu with a fortuitous encounter before drifting off into the distance. From then on, the two of them would have no relationship at all. However, Li Jianglu gave Yi Xian a very different feeling. This feeling was extremely familiar, and when he tried hard to recall, the appearance of a familiar person appeared in his mind. Yi Xian noticed to his astonishment that this kid was actually extremely similar to Fatso Huang. They both had a petty and lowly love. However, Fatso Huang had transformed into an extremely evil person in the end, whereas Li Jianglu hadn't transformed. Yi Xian had a feeling that perhaps Li Jianglu would be of great use to him, and it would depend on whether Li Jianglu was able to transform today. This was also a test that Yi Xian had given him. Chapter 270. On 9 Radiance Peak. Li Jianglu hid himself in the air and silently watched Yin Kai'er and Yan Yunfei get married while the congratulatory voices of the guests resounded in his ears. Li Jiangliu's fists were clenched and unclenched from time to time. He really had the impulse to appear before Yin Kai'er without caring about anything and take her far away. He knew that as long as he wanted to, he could really do it because he had the Demon Slayer True Lord behind him. The Demon Slayer True Lord Yi Xian was someone who could be on par with the war god of the 3 dimensions, Yang Jian, so how could the tiny Jiuhua sect dare to say no? However, when Li Jianglu saw Yin Kai'er nestled happily in Yan Yunfei's arms, he didn't do so in the end because he respected Yin Kai'er and could tell that this senior sister of his really liked Yan Yunfei. Liking someone didn't necessarily mean obtaining her. If she could be happy for her entire life, Li Jianglu would be satisfied. At this moment, Li Jianglu finally let go completely, and he silently blessed Yin Kai'er in his heart. On the other hand, even though Yan Yunfei had once crippled his cultivation and even framed him, he was already Yin Kai'er's husband now, so this enmity would disappear with the wind. First, bow to the heavens and earth. Second, bow to the parents. Husband and wife, bow to each other. The ceremony is complete. Under Li Jiangliu's silent gaze, Yin Kai'er and Yan Yunfei finally became husband and wife. Sect Master, bad news. Li Jianglu has been rescued from the Pill Pavilion. Suddenly, the red-robed Taoist had an anxious expression as he appeared before the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal with a medicine slave. What? Li Jianglu was rescued? How is that possible? The 9 Radiance Profound Immortal was stunned as he spoke in surprise. When they heard the red-robed Taoist's description, Yin Kai'er and Yan Yunfei's expressions changed as well, and a strand of panic flashed through their eyes. Obviously, they were quite shocked by this news. Logically speaking, Li Jianglu was only a tiny medicine slave. Not to mention being rescued, even if he died miserably in the Pill Pavilion, the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal wouldn't pay attention to him. On the other hand, even though Yin Kai'er and Yan Yunfei had interacted many times with Li Jianglu in the past, Li Jianglu was only a cripple, so it naturally shouldn't shock them. However, when this news came, these people could not sit still any longer. The cauldron of the immortal replenishing pill is about to be opened. Without Li Jianglu as the guiding ingredient, how will the immortal replenishing pill be refined? Exalted Immortal 9 Splendor muttered coldly while his expression had already turned completely gloomy. It was no wonder that the 9 Radiance Xian Immortal was so furious. After all, Li Jianglu was only an outer court disciple at that time, and he'd made a name for himself during the sect competition and defeated all his opponents before being taken into the inner court in one go. This naturally caused the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal to be puzzled, and he'd once investigated exactly what kind of fortuitous encounter Li Jianglu had obtained. Under the detection of the 9 Radiance Mysterious Immortal, he noticed to his astonishment that Li Jiangliu's body was filled with a large amount of immortal energy, and this sort of immortal energy was the reason why his cultivation rose violently. When the Jiuhua Xian Immortal learned of this result, he had even asked Li Jianglu about the source of the immortal qi in his body. However, the other party stammered and gave a lame excuse. However, this matter had always caused the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal to be extremely envious, and he'd always wanted to guide the immortal qi in Li Jiangliu's body out because this would allow his cultivation to advance a level. Unfortunately, no matter what method the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal used, he was unable to guide the immortal qi in Li Jiangliu's body out. For the sake of finding out the secrets of the source of Li Jiangliu's immortal qi, he'd asked Dean Kaier to intentionally approach this person and finally found out about Li Jiangliu's secret. According to Li Jianglu and Yin Kaier's description, he'd once saved an immortal. When this immortal was recuperating, he'd unknowingly absorbed some of the immortal qi emanated by this immortal, and that was why he'd obtained this fortuitous encounter. However, after a few years, the immortal Li Jianglu spoke of hadn't appeared. This caused the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal to let go of the misgivings in his heart and finally set his sights on the immortal qi in Li Jiangliu's body. After some planning, the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal made his proud disciple, Yan Yunfei, cripple Li Jiangliu's cultivation during the sect competition. After that, he asked Dean Kaier to invite Li Jianglu into her room and caught him red-handed. He slandered Li Jianglu for wanting to do something to Yin Kaier, and he was sent to the pill pavilion to become a lowly medicine slave on the spot. If it wasn't for the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal being slightly fearful of the immortal behind Li Jianglu, he would have thrown Li Jianglu into the pill furnace a few years ago to refine the immortal replenishing pill that increased his cultivation. However, Li Jianglu had actually been saved today, so how could the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal not be furious to the extreme? Red-robed martial uncle, do you know who saved Li Jianglu? Yin Kaier bit her lips slightly and asked. It's a great immortal saved him. The medicine slave didn't dare hesitate and hurriedly described the process of Yi Xian saving Li Jianglu. Hiss. As soon as the medicine slave finished speaking, all of them gasped. Yan Yunfei's expression even changed slightly as he said, could it be that it's true that Li Jianglu once saved an immortal? Alright, today is the day the two of you are getting married. Let's talk about this later. As soon as the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal finished speaking, he called the red-robed Taoist over to the pill pavilion. Obviously, he wanted to ask about the process of Li Jiangliu's disappearance in detail. At this moment, Li Jianglu was originally about to leave, but when he saw this scene, he was slightly stunned while bewilderment appeared in his eyes. He was only a tiny medicine slave, so why did the 9 Radiance Profound Immortal and the others attach so much importance to him? The veil of night descended, and the sky was filled with stars. When the guests dispersed, Yin Kaier lay in Yan Yunfei's arms while a wisp of worry appeared on her face. Senior brother Yunfei, we framed Li Jianglu all those years ago, and you even crippled his cultivation. Now that he was saved by an immortal, he'll probably become a great calamity for our 9 Radiance Immortal sect. Yan Yunfei stroked Yin Kaier's hair and said in a gentle voice, you don't have to worry. Li Jianglu is extremely stupid, and he doesn't know that we framed him at all. Moreover, even if he knows and intends to take revenge, Master is at the mysterious immortal realm, so what sort of storm can he cause? The two of them exchanged questions and answers, and they naturally seemed to be in love with each other. However, the two of them didn't know that when this scene entered into Li Jiangliu's eyes, it even caused his face to be stunned while his body trembled slightly. The immortal light dispersed, and then Li Jianglu appeared. He gazed at Yin Kaier with a dazed expression while his voice trembled slightly. Senior sister, what did you say just now? Li Jiangliu's sudden appearance instantly caused their expressions to change drastically, and it even stunned Yin Kaier on the spot. She'd never imagined that Li Jianglu would actually appear before her. Senior sister, what exactly happened all those years ago? Li Jiangliu's face flushed red as he stared fixedly at Yin Kaier, and he hoped that she could give him an answer. Unfortunately, before Yin Kaier could answer him, Yan Yunfei suddenly returned to his senses, and a ghastly cold smile appeared on his face. He said, alright, so a piece of trash like you still hasn't left. I'll capture you today, and Master will be able to refine immortal replenishing pills while Kaier and I will be able to advance greatly in our cultivations. Li Jianglu directly disregarded Yan Yunfei. He stared fixedly at Yin Kaier and spoke with a trembling voice. Senior sister, you once said that you liked me, could it be that it was all fake? Chapter 271. It really isn't wrong to say that you're stupid. How could Kai, like trash like you? Yan Yunfei's eyes were gloomy as he sneered, and he directly spoke of the truth from all those years ago. This caused Li Jiangliu's face to turn ghastly pale, and his gaze towards Yin Kai revealed an extremely complicated expression. Senior sister Kai, is what he said true? Li Jiangliu clenched his fists tightly while veins bulged on his fists, and it proved how shaken his mind was. Jiangliu, I'm sorry. At this point, too much explanation was useless. Yin Kai knew that Li Jiangliu really liked her, and this caused her to lower her head in shame while her eyes were filled with extreme guilt. Li Jiangliu had a bitter expression as he looked at Yin Kai's guilty appearance. He really hoped that Yin Kai would tell him that all of this was fake. However, Li Jiangliu knew that he was only deceiving himself. This caused him to feel disheartened, and he only wanted to leave this place that caused him pain and never return. Senior sister Kai, I don't blame you. I wish you happiness. Two streams of tears flowed from Li Jiangliu's eyes, and he turned around with the intention of leaving this place of sorrow. You want to leave? Do you think you can? How could Yan Yunfei allow Li Jiangliu to leave? He directly rode his sword out while his cultivation at the body integration realm erupted with a bang, and it carried a terrifying sword light that was about to crush Li Jiangliu here. Fuck off. Bang. Before Yan Yunfei's sword light could arrive, Li Jiangliu slapped out furiously with his palm. The glow of a heavenly immortal suddenly obliterated the sword light, and it even struck Yan Yunfei to the point his entire body cracked apart. A large amount of blood sprayed from his mouth as his body smashed fiercely into the ground. Senior brother Yunfei. Yin Kai had a sorrowful expression as she flashed over to Yan Yunfei, and she even hurriedly fed him a medicinal pill while the worry on her face was extremely dense. Cough. How is this possible? Blood couldn't help but seep out from Yan Yunfei's mouth. Under Yin Kai's support, he looked at Li Jiangliu with extreme horror. He was unable to understand how Li Jiangliu could actually possess such a terrifying cultivation even though his cultivation had clearly been crippled. As he looked at Yin Kai's worried and sorrowful appearance because of Yan Yunfei, Li Jiangliu's heart ached as if it was being sliced by a blade. This sort of heart-wrenching pain caused killing intent to arise in his heart, and his gaze towards Yan Yunfei was already crimson red to the extreme. Yan Yunfei, you crippled my cultivation back then. Today, I'll let you have a taste of the pain I suffered back then. Li Jiangliu slowly walked towards Yan Yunfei. His palm and fingers were emitting immortal light, and the killing intent around him was extremely blazing. However, before he could make a move against Yan Yunfei, Yin Kai directly stood in front of Yan Yunfei. She even revealed a pleading expression as she looked at Li Jiangliu, and her eyes that were like limpid autumn waters were suffused with a large amount of mist. She choked with sobs as she said, Junior brother Jiangliu, if you want to kill someone, then kill Kai, I beg you to spare senior brother Yunfei. As he gazed at Yin Kai's sorrowful appearance and the clear tears on her face, Li Jiangliu was stunned on the spot. His eyes drifted slightly, and he couldn't help but recall the bits and pieces of his memories with Yin Kai. It was early summer. In a bamboo forest, the two of them held hands as they strolled through the forest. Junior brother Jiangliu, was the ginseng black chicken soup tasty? Yin Kai skipped with light and quick steps as she turned around and smiled playfully at Li Jiangliu. It's delicious as long as it's made by senior sister Kai, 8 years ago, Li Jiangliu was still a young man. He smiled foolishly, but his face revealed a blissful expression. Senior sister Kai, Jiangliu promises you that as long as I'm alive, I definitely won't let anyone bully you, nor will I let you shed a single tear. Li Jiangliu pointed at the sky and swore to Yin Kai in this bamboo forest. Remember what you said. If someone bullies me in the future, you have to stand up for me, Yin Kai said with a smile. I, Li Jiangliu, am a man of my word. If someone dares to bully senior sister Kai, then even if I have to give up my life, I'll definitely stand in front of senior sister Kai, Li Jianglu said firmly. The scenes of the past resounded through Li Jiangliu's mind. The beauty before him was looking at him with tears streaming down her face, and this caused Li Jiangliu's heart to shatter to the extreme. He stared at Yin Kaier in a daze while the killing intent around him gradually dispersed at this moment. Kai, now is the time. Kill him. Suddenly, Yan Yunfei shouted out coldly. Yin Kaier's face changed slightly, and a wisp of guilt flashed through her eyes. However, she still gritted her teeth, and a sharp dagger appeared in her hand. She suddenly stabbed it into Li Jiangliu's heart. Spurt. The icy cold dagger stabbed into his heart. As the dagger was pulled out, hot blood sprayed out from Li Jiangliu's heart. Yin Kaier even took a few steps back in fear, and a wisp of panic appeared in her eyes as she looked at Li Jianglu. Everything fell silent. The world was silent. Li Jianglu looked at Yin Kaier in a daze. His trembling hand covered his heart, but a large amount of blood flowed out uncontrollably, and it gradually dyed his body red. Die! Yan Yunfei laughed cruelly. He directly rode his sword over and pierced through Li Jiangliu's chest once more. As the sword was pulled out, Yan Yunfei kicked Li Jianglu to the ground. There was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. At this moment, Li Jianglu was completely unable to feel the pain in his body. He crawled up from the ground with great difficulty, and he held his bleeding heart as he stared fixedly at the woman he loved the most in his life. 2 streams of blood even flowed from his eyes. Why? Why? Li Jiangliu's life force was ceaselessly vanishing after his heart was pierced through. However, he only wanted an answer before he died. This caused him to hold his heart and stare fixedly at Yin Kaier, hoping that she could give him an answer. Junior brother Jianglu, I'm sorry. I've never liked you. The person I truly like is senior brother Yunfei. Yin Kaier's face was pale, but she still gave this answer. This caused Li Jianglu to laugh miserably, and he even let out a shrill wail. So everything was fake. It was all fake. A strand of immortal light suddenly erupted from Li Jiangliu's body, and it caused him to flee desperately towards the distance. Kai, his heart has been pierced through, so he definitely won't be able to live for long. There's immortal chi remaining in his body, and it's the catalyst for refining the immortal replenishing pill. Quickly notify Master that Li Jianglu is still in Haoshuan Mountain. We must find him. Yan Yunfei spoke hastily, and then he dragged his heavily injured body back to the 9 Radiance Hall. Clearly, Li Jiangliu's attack from before had heavily injured him, so he could only recuperate first. Yin Kaier nodded solemnly. She didn't dare dally at all, and she quickly headed to the Pill Pavilion to notify the 9 Radiance mysterious immortal and report Li Jiangliu's appearance to him. Heaven's End Peak. A crescent moon hung in the sky while stars dotted the night sky. Yi Xian sat cross-legged at the peak of Heaven's End Peak. When his eyes opened and closed, there was only indifference and emotionlessness. He'd naturally witnessed everything that Li Jianglu had experienced. However, he didn't stop the tragedy from occurring. He wanted to see what Li Jianglu would choose in the end and whether he would be that extremely evil person in his heart. Bang! The immortal light fell to the ground while Li Jiangliu's entire body was bathed in blood. He walked step by step towards Yi Xian, and he said with a sorrowful voice, "True monarch, please save my life." "All right." Yi Xian smiled strangely. When he flicked his fingers through the air, the Grand Unity immortal light effused out and instantly enveloped Li Jianglu. Under the restoration of the Grand Unity immortal light, Li Jiangliu's damaged heart recovered at an extremely fast speed. After a few dozen breaths of time, Li Jianglu finally managed to survive. "I've saved your life today, and it can be considered as repaying your kindness from all those years ago. From today onwards, we don't owe each other anything." Yi Xian spoke calmly. Li Jianglu was already heartbroken from having his heart pierced by the love of his life. Now, when he heard Yi Xian's words, it caused him to laugh miserably. He knew that his fate with Yi Xian had come to an end. He knelt down and kowtowed 3 times to Yi Xian, and then he stood up and staggered down the mountain. Unfortunately, before Li Jianglu could take a few steps, Yi Xian's strange voice resounded once more. You won't be able to walk out of Haoshuan Mountain without my help. Look at the lanterns that cover the mountain, they're searching for your whereabouts. In the end, you can only be thrown into a pill furnace to be refined into an immortal replenishing pill for Yin Kai'er and the others to consume. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, Li Jiangliu's figure paused for a moment. His body slightly trembled, and an extremely terrifying killing intent appeared around him. It was obvious that what Yi Xian said was the truth. Do you hate me? Do you resent me? Do you feel boundless unwillingness in your heart? Yi Xian's voice was like the low voice of a devil, and it was filled with bewitching intent. A mere woman is capable of causing you to be dejected to such an extent. They really didn't wrong you by calling you trash. Yi Xian smiled coldly. Bang! Suddenly, Li Jianglu returned and knelt before Yi Xian. His face was already covered in traces of tears, and he said with a sorrowful voice, Please take me as your disciple. Yi Xian shook his head slowly like a devil was strolling about, and the gaze he shot at Li Jianglu seemed to be deep and strange. I won't take you as my disciple. If you're willing, you can make an exchange with me of equal value. I can bestow upon you a supreme cultivation as well. It just depends on whether you dare to make the exchange with me. Li Jianglu was stunned when he heard Yi Xian's words. He didn't understand what he could make an exchange with Yi Xian, and this made him kowtow towards Yi Xian and say, Jianglu has nothing but a worthless life. May I know what true monarch wants to exchange with me? At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes were deep, and his voice was like a devil's temptation as he said, I want you to kill all the seniors and juniors of the same sect that once mocked and humiliated you, and I want you to bring Yin Kai'er's head to me. If you can do it, I'll bestow upon you a supreme cultivation, and this is also your last chance. As for what you choose, it's up to you. Kill senior sister Kai'er. Li Jiangliu's body trembled while his expression was extremely stunned. Even his voice was trembling, and it proved how shaken his heart was. I'll only give you half a day. If you're unable to bring Yin Kai'er's head to me in half a day, then I'll leave this place as well. From then on, your life and death will have nothing to do with me. Go. Yi Xian's expression was calm as a strand of immortal light shot out, and it directly sent Li Jianglu away from Heaven's End Peak. Chapter 272. The veil of night was like a curtain while the lone moon hung high in the sky. There were a large number of cultivators flying through the sky. The various checkpoints on Haoshuan Mountain were guarded by cultivators, and the continuous rising and falling mountain range was even brightly lit. Countless disciples of the Nine Radiance Immortal sect were searching for Li Jiangliu's tracks. 9 Radiance Peak. Li Jianglu carefully moved stealthily under the cover of the night, and he even frequently lay prone in the dense grass to avoid the cultivators that flashed past above him. Everyone didn't want to die, and even Li Jianglu was no exception. Not only did Li Jianglu not want to die, he even wanted to live on properly. Because he knew that this was his last chance, and only by completing the assignment Yi Xian gave him would he be able to truly start a new life. When Yin Kai'er pierced through his heart, the former Li Jianglu was already dead. Presently, there was only boundless unwillingness and rage that couldn't be suppressed in his heart. However, he'd always been in a state of hesitation and struggle all along the way. He could kill anyone, but he was only unable to kill Yin Kai'er. When Yin Kai'er pierced through his heart, he was entirely capable of killing this woman. However, he was really unable to do so, and he could only flee dejectedly in the end. Li Jianglu was muddle-headed and hesitated for a long time, and he was extremely conflicted. However, he still headed towards 9 Radiance Peak because perhaps when he saw this woman again, he would be able to make the final decision. He had to face what he had to face in the end. Li Jianglu knew that he couldn't avoid it. He only had 2 strands of the last heavenly immortal energy within his body, and this was a method of slaughter that Yi Xian had given him. Everyone on 9 Radiance Peak was an inner court disciple. Every single inner court disciple possessed an independent abode, and they were the foundation of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect. These abodes were established halfway up the mountain, and as far as the eye could see, numerous abodes were connected together. When Li Jianglu flashed into one of the abodes like a leopard, a muffled groan sounded out, and then Li Jiuyo swiftly appeared and continued to move stealthily towards the next abode. Li Jianglu had never killed anyone, and this was the first time he'd killed someone. However, perhaps he was born to kill, so when he personally slaughtered a senior brother that had once ridiculed and humiliated him, his mind wasn't shaken in the slightest. Puff! Puff! A spirit saber glowed with a cold light, and a female disciple of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect was beheaded. Before she died, her eyes were wide open as she looked at Li Jianglu with astonishment and unwillingness. However, Li Jianglu didn't feel anything at all, and he instead felt comfortable in his heart. Is this the feeling of killing someone? Li Jianglu muttered to himself as he looked at the female corpse beneath his feet that was gradually turning cold and stiff. There was a wisp of intoxication in his eyes as if he was sensing something. He slowly walked away without any ripples. When killing became an instinct, when killing became an alternative release, Li Jianglu was undergoing an extremely terrifying transformation. This transformation was not in terms of cultivation, but in terms of spirit. There was a faint shadow of Fatso Huang in him, and this was the evil person that Yi Xian wanted. Yi Xian needed this kind of person because this kind of person could live for a long time and be of use to him. Li Jianglu was like a shadow in the night as he moved stealthily through the abodes of the inner court disciples. Along with every place he passed, a familiar person that he once knew would die miserably at his hands. The kindness of the past had gradually vanished, and a wisp of a vicious and ruthless aura bloomed around him. When he walked out of the last abode while covered in blood, his entire body became gloomy and silent. "Yin Kai'er, let's put an end to this between us." Li Jianglu looked at the 9 Radiance Palace on the peak of the mountain from afar, and then he transformed into a shadow that moved stealthily towards the peak of the mountain. The candles flickered as they entered the bridal chamber. As the daughter of a 9 Radiance mysterious immortal, Yin Kai'er's status in the 9 Radiance Immortal sect was naturally obvious. On the other hand, as the head disciple of the 9 Radiance Immortal sect, Yan Yunfei's status was even more noble and illustrious. Today was their wedding day, and it was the best time to spend the night together. Making love in the bridal chamber was something that men and women loved to do the most. However, Li Jiangliu's appearance destroyed this moment. Yan Yunfei's face was pale as he sat cross-legged on the bed to heal. Yin Kai'er would wipe away the cold sweat on Yan Yunfei's forehead from time to time. Her beautiful face was filled with heartache. Huff! Yan Yunfei slowly opened his eyes after exhaling a mouthful of foul air. He said with a sunken voice, "This trash's cultivation is so powerful. I almost died at his hands. Senior brother Yunfei, his heart has been pierced through by Kai, so he won't be able to live for long. Father is also searching for his corpse with the elders of the sect, so don't get angry," Yin Kai'er consoled him gently. Yan Yunfei's heart warmed up with his wife by his side. He pulled Yin Kai'er into his arms and said apologetically, "Today was supposed to be our bridal chamber, but I'm heavily injured. It's been hard on you, Kai-er." Yin Kai'er happily leaned against Yan Yunfei's bosom, her slender jade-like hands drawing circles on his chest as she softly said, "Senior brother Yunfei, don't say that. As long as you can accompany Kai-er by her side, Kai-er is already very satisfied." Clap. 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 Suddenly, a series of claps rang out, causing the couple's faces to change drastically. "Who is it?" Come out, Yan Yunfei said coldly. What a loving couple. Li Jianglu walked out from the shadows with a calm expression. He looked at the two of them with an extremely calm gaze. It's you. Li Jiangliu's appearance caused the couple to cry out in shock. They had never thought that Li Jianglu would still be alive after being pierced through the heart. Instead, he would appear in their bridal chamber. Swish! There was a cold flash of a blade. Before Yan Yunfei could react, one of his arms had been directly chopped off by Li Jianglu. The pain of having his arm severed caused Yan Yunfei to cry out miserably. Senior brother. Yin Kai'er cried out with a trembling voice when she saw this. Stomp! 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 Li Jiangliu's expression was calm while a warm smile hung on his face. He walked slowly towards the couple with the spirit saber in his hand. Junior brother, it's all my fault. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Don't harm senior brother Yunfei. Yin Kai'er's eyes were filled with tears as she directly knelt before Li Jianglu, and she even sobbed as she pleaded with him. Slap! Suddenly, a resounding slap resounded. Li Jianglu had slapped Yin Kai'er flying, and a red handprint appeared on her pure white face while strands of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. At this moment, Yin Kai'er was completely stunned. She covered her face as she stared blankly at Li Jianglu. She was completely unable to believe that this junior brother of hers who had always been infatuated with her would actually be so heartless as to hit her. Li Jianglu, you piece of trash. Come at me if you have the ability. Don't harm Kai-er. Yan Yunfei clenched his fists tightly while his gaze towards Li Jianglu had already turned crimson red. Husband and wife are birds in the same forest, but they fly separately when disaster strikes. Chapter 273. Li Jianglu smiled warmly while his voice was calm and kind. However, the killing intent that suffused his body was on the verge of erupting. This caused Yin Kai'er's expression to change slightly. She felt as if Li Jianglu had become a completely different person, and he wasn't that kind junior brother that she could order around any longer. Senior sister, I can give you a chance. So long as you kill Yan Yunfei with your own two hands, Li Jianglu, can completely spare your life. Li Jianglu walked slowly towards Yin Kai'er, and he even squatted down to lightly stroke Yin Kai'er's hair while his eyes still carried an expression of infatuation. Swish! Suddenly, a spirit dagger appeared in Yin Kai'er's hand, and she didn't hesitate to stab it towards Li Jiangliu's heart. But this time, Yin Kai'er didn't succeed. The dagger in her hand fell powerlessly to the ground while Li Jianglu held her hand with a smile on his face, and his warm voice resounded slowly. Senior sister, junior brother has already been taught a lesson once. Could it be that you don't know? Ha ha ha. Li Jiangliu's fingers were tightening, and he crushed the bones in Yin Kai'er's hand inch by inch, causing her to let out a shrill cry while her delicate and beautiful face warped at this moment. Ayaya, senior sister, I hurt you. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Li Jianglu hurriedly let go of Yin Kai'er's hand and even apologized in an extremely sincere manner. However, the gaze Yin Kai'er shot at Li Jianglu was already filled with unimaginable terror. Li Jianglu, I'll fight you to the death. How could Yan Yunfei endure the heavy injury that his wife suffered? His eyes were crimson red as he summoned his own sword and slashed it towards Li Jianglu. Unfortunately, Yan Yunfei was already heavily injured, and one of his arms had even been severed by Li Jianglu. So, how could he be a match for Li Jianglu? Bang! Li Jianglu merely slapped Yan Yunfei to the ground with a single palm strike, and then a wide foot suddenly stomped on Yan Yunfei's head and even crushed it back and forth. You piece of trash! You should be grateful that I didn't kill you now and not bite me like a dog. Li Jianglu spoke viciously while a terrifying and enormous force erupted beneath his feet, and it caused Yan Yunfei's head to continuously collapse while blood sprayed from his mouth. He suffered an unimaginable heavy injury. After suffering such humiliation from Li Jianglu, Yan Yunfei's mind and body were injured, and he'd already gone completely mad. He roared furiously beneath Li Jiangliu's feet. Li Jianglu, kill me if you have the ability. Even if I transform into a ghost, I'll still eat your flesh and drink your blood. TSK TSK TSK. Li Jianglu shook his head slowly and moved his foot away from Yan Yunfei's head. After that, he squatted down and patted Yan Yunfei's swollen face, and his voice was strange and malicious as he said, "Senior brother Yan, what are you talking about? We're senior brothers, so how could I, junior brother, possibly kill you? Of course, I'll let your most beloved wife end your life. This is the perfect ending." Ha! Yan Yunfei laughed wildly when he heard Li Jiangliu's words. Li Jianglu, Kai, and I are very close. Even if you kill both of us, she definitely won't betray me. Oh. Li Jiangliu's eyes were filled with surprise, and then he looked at Yin Kaier and said coldly, "Senior sister Kai, don't say that I didn't give you a chance. I'll only give you 10 breaths of time. If you don't kill Yan Yunfei, then I can only send you and your wife to hell." Li Jianglu held the spirit saber in his hand while a wisp of immortal light blossomed from it, and his entire body was coiled with extreme killing intent. Clearly, he wasn't just saying it for fun. If Yin Kaier didn't do as he said, then he would definitely kill the two of them with his own hands. Kai, even if we can't be husband and wife in the mortal world, we can continue our fate in the netherworld. Yan Yunfei wasn't afraid at all, and he trusted his wife very much, so he even comforted her gently. 1, 2, 3, it was like the bell of the dead was ringing, and it was like Yama was attacking. Li Jianglu watched coldly, but his voice reverberated by their ears. At this very moment, Yin Kaier's eyes were filled with tears, and her face was filled with sorrow. She slowly crawled up from the ground, and then she strolled towards Yan Yunfei. She hugged him gently and said with a choked voice, "Senior brother Yunfei, even if we die, we'll die together." Yan Yunfei's tears flowed from his eyes as his wife entered his embrace. His remaining arm hugged Yin Kaier tightly, and he said sorrowfully, "We're willing to be birds in the wings in the heavens, and we're willing to be intertwined branches on earth. Today, we'll go to hell together. Even if I die." Spurt. Suddenly, before Yan Yunfei could finish speaking, a muffled sound came from his chest. The icy cold blade was constantly stirring up his heart. This caused Yan Yunfei's eyes to become lifeless as he stared fixedly at his wife. It was as if he had turned into a clay puppet. Spurt. The icy cold dagger was suddenly pulled out from Yan Yunfei's chest, causing a large amount of blood to spray out and dye Yin Kaier's body. Yin Kaier slowly stroked Yan Yunfei's face, and her voice was still weak and sorrowful. "Senior brother, Kai, can't die yet. Kai, has let you down today. Don't hate me after you go to hell." Spurt. 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 Yan Yunfei spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood in succession. He held tightly onto his chest, and the gaze he shot at Yin Kaier was filled with extreme unwillingness, rage, and hatred. "Bitch, you. Bang!" Yan Yunfei didn't finish speaking in the end. His body gradually became icy cold and stiff, and his eyes were opened wide before he died, proving how he died with everlasting regret. Clang! The dagger in Yin Kaier's hand fell to the ground. She covered her face and sobbed, causing others to see her seem extremely pitiful. Clap! 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 Li Jianglu clapped lightly, and his expression was calm and indifferent as he said, "Senior sister, you really are ruthless and vicious. Junior brother, senior sister was really wrong. Please forgive me. Yan Yunfei forced me to do all of this." Yin Kaier stood up from the ground, and she even threw herself into Li Jiangliu's embrace while sobbing as if she'd suffered an extremely great grievance. "Alright, it's all in the past. It's really all in the past. Li Jianglu had a sorrowful expression as he hugged the woman he loved the most in his life and consoled her in a light voice. Junior brother, Yan Yunfei is already dead. Are you willing to marry senior sister? Yin Kaier's eyes were filled with tears as she wrapped her arms around Li Jiangliu's neck. When her cherry lips parted slightly, she exhaled a mouthful of orchid fragrance, and she looked at Li Jianglu with misty eyes as if she was waiting for Li Jianglu to pluck her. At this moment, Yan Yunfei's miserable corpse was beneath their feet, but an extremely ambiguous atmosphere reverberated between the two of them. If a third person saw this scene, that person would definitely feel a chill run down their spine. As he gazed at Yin Kaier's misty eyes and slightly parted cherry lips, Li Jiangliu's eyes were dazed and slightly infatuated. He slowly kissed Yin Kaier's cherry lips, and it even caused her to let out a delicate moan. This kiss continued for over 10 breaths of time. When the two of them slowly separated, Yin Kaier shyly leaned into Li Jiangliu's embrace, and she seemed to have transformed into a happy little woman. Chapter 274. Senior sister, do you know? You're the woman I love the most in my life. In the past, I would have no regrets even if I were to die for you, Li Jianglu said sorrowfully. Yin Kaier leaned into Li Jiangliu's embrace and said gently, Junior brother, it's all in the past. From now on, we'll never be separated again. Will definitely treat you well, and I won't let you down, spurt. Suddenly, a cold and sharp blade pierced through Yin Kaier's heart silently. The blade stirred slightly, and dark red blood flowed out from Yin Kaier's chest. It stunned her. She slowly raised her head to look at Li Jianglu, but she saw that his face was already covered in tears. Why? Yin Kaier's body trembled. Her delicate expression had vanished. She stared at Li Jianglu, hoping to obtain an answer. Tears covered his face as Li Jianglu wept silently. However, the blade in his hand became more and more vicious. It was stirring up Yin Kaier's heart cruelly and viciously, bringing unimaginable pain to her. Spurt. Li Jiangliu's face was sorrowful and sorrowful. He suddenly pulled the blade out of Yin Kaier's heart, and a wisp of fiery blood sprayed onto his face. However, he did not wipe it away at all. Senior sister, do you know? Li Jianglu murmured bitterly. He looked at Yin Kaier with great affection. The Li Jianglu of the past is already dead. He'll never return. Spurt. Li Jianglu smiled bitterly, but the blade in his hand pierced through Yin Kaier's chest once more, causing her to let out a miserable cry. Senior sister, I really love you, but you'll never know how terrifying it is when a kind person turns into a demon. Swish. The blade was pulled out once more. The blood was bleak and beautiful, and it caused Yin Kaier to collapse to the ground. She looked at Li Jianglu with unimaginable fear. Senior sister remember this in your next life. Don't bully an honest person, because every honest person hides a demon in their heart. You were the one who released the demon in my heart. Li Jianglu murmured and wept, but the blade in his hand was merciless and vicious. He cut Yin Kaier into pieces as if he had fallen into some sort of indescribable sorrow. Yin Kaier had already died without a complete corpse. Even in death, she could not understand why Li Jianglu was so vicious and vicious, why he was so deranged. Clang! The knife in his hand fell to the ground, and Li Jianglu knelt on the ground powerlessly. He looked at Yin Kaier's tragic corpse in a daze, and an indescribable smile appeared on his face. However, the tears in his eyes were rolling down. Bury this lowly love, from now on, there will be no Li Jiangliu's heart's heart. Li Jiangliu's, Li Jianglu Li Jiangliu's, Jiangliu's, Jianglu to Jianglu to his to die to the end. Li Jianglu was a kind person and an honest person. Jianglu Jiangtou the Jianglu Jiangs to Jianglu, to the Jianglu Jiangtou Jianglu, to the CTO release to release the Li Jiang Jiangliu S. When the Buddha's heart was gone and only the devil's heart remained, this was the most terrifying person. This sort of person could do unimaginable evil because he had gone from extreme kindness to extreme evil. He had experienced great sorrow and hatred in life, and the so-called morality and kindness had been completely abandoned by this sort of person. At this moment, Li Jianglu was undoubtedly such a person, and he had become the person Yi Xian wanted. How dare you! Suddenly, a furious roar resounded as dazzling immortal light descended. The 9 radiance Xian Immortal appeared here with all the elders. When he saw the corpse of his disciple and daughter that had died miserably, his body trembled extremely. Originally, the 9 radiance Xian Immortal was searching everywhere for Li Jiangliu's whereabouts, but when Yin Kaier died miserably, her soul tablet had shattered in the 9 radiance Xian Immortal's hands. This allowed the 9 radiance Xian Immortal to know that his daughter had been killed, and this was why he rushed over here like a madman. Li Jianglu, you traitor! I'll definitely destroy your soul. The 9 radiance Xian Immortal roared furiously as a ray of immortal light slapped out, and he was about to annihilate Li Jianglu here. Unfortunately, Li Jianglu had 2 strands of heavenly immortal power in his body, and this was also a life-saving method that Yi Xian had given him. Facing the furious attack of the 9 radiance Xian Immortal, he activated a strand of heavenly immortal power and instantly transformed into an immortal light that fled towards Heaven's End Peak. Old dog 9 radiance, it's still too early for you to kill me. Li Jianglu laughed sinisterly as his voice echoed in the mountains. Chase after him. No matter who's behind him, even if my 9 radiance immortal sect is destroyed, I'll tear this traitor into pieces. The 9 radiance Xian Immortal roared furiously and directly transformed into his true form of a goshawk. When he spread his wings, he violently chased after Li Jianglu. The sect master was furious, and the elders didn't dare hesitate. They all rode out streaks of light and even took out various Dharma treasures to chase after Li Jianglu. The surrounding space rumbled and exploded. The 9 radiance Xian Immortal transformed into a goshawk, and his speed was unimaginably swift. Even though Li Jianglu had 2 strands of heavenly immortal power in his body, the 9 radiance Xian Immortal was an immortal in the end, so how could Li Jianglu resist him? In less than 3 breaths of time, before Li Jianglu could flee to Heaven's End Peak, the 9 radiance Xian Immortal's wings whistled through the air. 2 strands of heaven-shattering immortal light directly struck Li Jianglu to the point of staggering, and it even caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood while the immortal light around him became extremely dim. At this moment, Li Jianglu was fleeing for his life in space, and he didn't even turn around to look at the 9 radiance Xian Immortal. Because he knew that he was utterly no match for the 9 radiance Xian Immortal, and only by fleeing to Heaven's End Peak would he be able to survive. Go! Li Jianglu had completely risked his life. The 2 strands of heavenly immortal power in his body erupted completely, and it enveloped his body as well. He transformed into a dazzling flowing light that shot violently towards Heaven's End Peak once more. Little bastard, no one will be able to save you today. The 9 radiance Xian Immortal had gone completely mad. The eagle he'd transformed into covered the heavens and the earth, and it even emitted a cry that tore through space. It carried monstrous rage, hatred, and viciousness as it pursued Li Jianglu violently. Amidst the frenzied pursuit of the 9 radiance Xian Immortal, Li Jiangliu's entire body was bathed in blood, and his expression was savage and sinister. However, when he saw Heaven's End Peak that was faintly discernible before him, his eyes revealed extreme excitement. Soon, soon. So long as I enter Heaven's End Peak, this old dog 9 radiance will definitely die. Li Jianglu muttered viciously in a low voice, and he was cheering himself on. He dragged his damaged body along as he sped up once more towards Heaven's End Peak. True monarch, save me. Bang! Li Jianglu let out a low roar while his damaged body finally descended towards the peak of Heaven's End Peak. A strand of immortal light covered him at this moment, and he steadily descended by Yi Xian's side. At the same time, the 9 radiants Xian Immortal led a large number of elders and disciples to appear in the sky above heaven's end peak. After a wave of immortal light surged, the 9 radiants Xian Immortal transformed into his human form once more, and he looked down with a solemn expression. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.